Hey guys, Anime Fanfics here. This is chapters 17 to 21 of the Namikaze Prodigy by Soul Reaper Crew. Links to all stories are in the description below, and make sure to like and subscribe to my channel. Chapter 17. Becoming Famous. Naruto pushed himself forwards as he ran along the tree branches with his eyes focused on the route ahead of him. Beside him Anko and Makoto jumped along his right and left, all looking towards the front, keeping their eyes focused and their wits about them. The trio were currently on a scouting mission along the border between Fire Country and Grass Country. They had gotten reports that a missing nin was seen along this route and had been causing trouble to travelers and merchants who were trying to get to Konoha and Iwa for trading purposes. They originated from Wave, since Wave was a major trade point in the elemental nations, and this missing nin had caused the trading to get many major delays. Naruto was sent to investigate alongside Anko and Makoto. Anko, since she wanted to get out of the village for a little while with the torture and integration division taking up a lot of her time. While Makoto was sent since Minato wanted a well-known shinobi on this mission in case things did not go their way. Itachi meanwhile had joined the Umbu and was quickly rising to the rank of an Umbu captain. Naruto, though offered to become an Umbu, settled instead with becoming a Jonin. The life of an Umbu was not the one he wanted. Anko, not wanting to be left behind, had managed to get pushed to special Jonin. While her taijutsu and summons were easily Jonin level, she still had to work on her ninjutsu and stamina portion of her skills, something Makoto was helping her with when possible. The trio were running almost on the border between the two countries, and they were surprised that they had not run into any Iwa shinobi yet, since most would have had patrols in the area similar to what they were doing. "Do you sense anyone, Naruto?" Makoto asked as Naruto focused on his surroundings. He spread his sensory abilities to 2 miles wide. After a moment of silence he opened them and shook his head. "Nothing so far. In that case it may be best to stop for the night. It is almost sundown and we do not want to be running during the night, since our view would be obscured and it will be more dangerous continuing." Naruto and Anko nodded and quickly found a small cave formation a little ways off that would be perfect for a camp setup. It was only about 12 feet long into the mountainside, but it did give them some cover and would likely be the best thing they would find. Makoto had been going on missions more regularly lately, since it helped to prove the Uchiha's loyalty to Konoha. When the other clans, shinobi and civilians, discovered and were told about the almost rebellion, the Uchiha clan lost a lot of trust and respect. Since then Makoto had become the head of the Uchiha clan and was grooming Itachi to one day take over, since he was the eldest child. She was teaching him what he needed to know so that when he took over he could be an efficient leader and know when to be kind and when to be strict. Something unfortunately Makoto's second son Sasuke seemed to need. When finding out about his father, Sasuke had become a very quiet, broody boy who preferred being alone and shot anyone down who wanted to befriend him. A few times Itachi and Makoto had to stop Sasuke from pushing Ria around, since he did not want a weak sister. Makoto would quickly discipline her son, which only made him brood more. He made his life goal to defeat his older brother and become the head of the clan. Itachi's only response to that was a flick to the forehead and telling him he would be waiting. It seemed that while Itachi and Ria had taken after Makoto mostly, Sasuke's personality was leaning more towards his father's and his way of thinking. The one clan though that thrived off the Uchiha clan essentially being cut in half was the Hyuga clan. Before, the Uchiha clan was the most powerful, but now with their numbers halved, the Hyuga clan was now the largest of main clans and as well as the most powerful. That was something the Hyugas obviously knew, since some became quite pompous and walked with an air of superiority. But the clan head Hayashi Hyuga quickly stopped that and punished anyone who tried to think that way. The Hyuga clan head may have been strict and most times cold, but he refused to have his clan looked down at because of a few members trying to act better than everyone else. "Naruto, you find us food whilst Anko and I will set up camp. You know what to do if anything goes wrong." Naruto nodded. "Throw a kunai in the air with a flare seal strapped to it." "I got it," he said as Makoto nodded at him and watched him leap into the bushes. With Naruto searched the nearby wooded areas and managed to come across a small river about 8 feet wide and went up to Naruto's knees. He guessed it must have connected to one of the bigger rivers and towards a lake, since he found it was teeming with fish. I was hoping to find a deer or maybe some rabbits, but I guess this will do," he said as went into the river. He closed his eyes and sensed the fish in the water as they gently and quietly swam past him. Waiting for a few moments, his hand suddenly struck the water, and a moment later his hand left the water and had a fish in his hand. Smiling, he threw the fish onto the river bank, and he copied this movement 5 more times until he had about 6 fish all resting on the riverbank. Nodding and thinking to himself, he just stood in the water for a few moments as he took in the clean air of the forest. He enjoyed the forest when it was peaceful and in a strange way felt one with it. Whether that was because of his Mokutan or it was just him. I should get back. No doubt Anko and Makoto will want their dinner. Anko after all has a stomach that seems endless. He thought, though the same could be said about him. Stretching his arms and cracking his shoulders, Naruto got out of the river and shook his legs, making small splashes of water hit the dirt and grass. He picked up the 6 fish, 3 to a hand, and began walking, though before he could move a chakra signature appeared to his surprise coming from behind him. He frowned when he felt it was panicked and possibly injured from the erratic feelings he was getting from it. A moment later a second, stronger signature appeared and quickly determined that the first signature must have been running from the second one. The second signature was definitely Jonin level, while the first was lower than a Jonin but a bit higher than a Chunin. Looks like they're about a mile away, he thought, and could feel the stronger of the two closing in fast. Biting his lip, Naruto quickly made a shadow clone. Go back to Makoto-sensei and Anko, tell them what I have sensed. I will put a flare kunai in the air when I have arrived to where the 2 signatures are. The clone nodded and took the 6 fish before he ran back to the camp, while Naruto turned, made sure his blade was strapped to his side before he pushed off as quick as he could and towards the location. As he ran, he could sense the 2 signatures getting closer and closer before he felt the first suddenly stop, almost like it was making a last stand. The second drew closer and flared its power. Naruto ducked under some branches and moved quickly and quietly through the trees, hardly leaving a mark on the branches from how fast he was going. Pushing off from the trees, he quickly found himself very close to the 2 signatures and found that they were in a small clearing. He poked his head through the bushes as quietly as he could and observed who the 2 signatures were. He first focused on the stronger of the 2. He was a man in his late 20s, maybe early 30s, and had blue eyes with a darker ripple around the pupil, waist-length green hair with the top 2 bangs falling down on his cheeks on each side, and having dark fleshy lips. He wore a gray hooded mantle with 3 red stripes. Under the mantle was a dark brown sleeveless vest falling to his knees where the inside was purple, a light brown belt, a light gray pants. All over his body were various protective bandages on his chest and legs. Naruto knew who he was from the studying the bingo books. This man was Raiga Kurisuke, a missing nin of Kiri, former member of the 7 Swordsmen, wielder of the dual swords Kiba, and a ranked shinobi. A very deadly foe, Naruto thought before he turned to the other signature and almost fell out of the tree when he saw who it was. For years it had been since he last saw her, and yet she looked almost exactly like the last time he saw her, other than the fact she was 4 years older as well. Her black hair was still short and stopped just past her chin. Her uniform was similar as well, though now she had the pale brown Chunin jacket added to it. What are the chances of her being here? He thought to himself before he saw the swordsman raise the twin Kiba blades. The pair of swords was slim and straight double-edged blades. Both blades also have an upward curved bladed prong near the tip of one side of blade and another one near the base of the blade's other side. Makoto-sensei will probably yell at me for this, he thought before, with a burst of speed pushed himself of the tree branch and landing between the 2. The 2 Kiba blades were coming down at him, so he drew Shusui out and managed to block the strike. When he blocked it, he threw a kunai into the air, making the flare, though no one was paying any attention to it. Naruto's interference caused both to be surprised, seeing another shinobi nearby, though Kuratsuchi had her jaw hanging open as she looked at Naruto. What is he doing here? Raiga though pushed himself away a couple of meters and looked at person in front of him. Kiroi Senko? Was his first thought before he realized the person in front of him was too young and the hair was too short as well as the eyes. Who are you, boy? Why are you interfering? Raiga asked as he took 2 steps forward with the Kiba blade held tightly in his hands. Naruto shrugged. I was in the neighborhood and I heard fighting. I came to check it out, and you can imagine my surprise when I find a member of the Seven Swordsmen fighting an injured Iwa Kunoichi. So why interfere? Last I checked, Konoha hated Iwa and vice versa. Oh, they still do, but I think it's a stupid rivalry. Personally, I have no problem with Iwa, and this girl here I know in a way. I don't really want to see her get killed. Naruto looked behind him for a moment to look at Kuratsuchi injuries. Her right leg had a big gash in it and a small bit of the bone was lodged out of her skin. It was a surprise that she managed to run as fast as she did with that kind of leg injury. He turned back to look at Raiga. You can't beat me, brat. I was once a member of the Seven Swordsmen, 7 of the best kenjutsu users in all of Kiri. You think you can hold a candle to my skills? There is one way to find out. I have always enjoyed fighting strong opponents, and I have always wanted to fight one of the 7. Kuratsuchi, who was lying behind them watching this unfold, did not understand it. She did not understand why he was protecting her. Shouldn't he hate her? After all, Iwa and Konoha were like oil and water. They just don't mix. As Naruto readied himself again, he felt his Kagebushin from earlier disperse, and now knowing that Enko and Makoto were on their way. Kuratsuchi. Naruto called, getting her attention. If you can move, then I suggest you move out of the clearing unless you want to get involved in your current state. He said. Kuratsuchi gave him a mild glare, but quickly dropped it before she did her best to crawl away. Focusing in front of him, Naruto's eyes went slightly wide when he saw Raiga now just a few feet from him with the Kiba blades coming down on top of him. He quickly brought Shusui up and blocked the strike and held it there as Raiga slowly began pushing him back, using his superior physical strength against Naruto. As Naruto got pushed back, he releases the hold from the 2 blades and ducked a swing. He then cocked his fist and threw it towards Raiga's side. Raiga though saw it coming and jump a few feet away only to see the punch caused a crater to form into the ground. I have to watch this one carefully. He thought, now recognizing that Naruto was not some run-of-the-mill shinobi. Raitun or Raikyu. Raiga said as a ball of lightning formed in his hands and he threw it towards Naruto. Naruto though saw the ball coming. Futon, de Tapa. A burst of wind shot forward stopped the lightning ball dead in its tracks and making the lightning dissipate. Naruto pushed off from the ground and went to deliver a hard kick to Raiga's stomach. Raiga however caught Naruto's foot and twisted it, making Naruto's body twist in air before he fell to the ground. A little dazed, Naruto saw one of the Kiba blades coming towards his head and move it to the side, narrowly dodging the top of the sword. He brought his left leg up and kicked Raiga away, making the swordsman's feet skid along the ground a few meters before he stopped. Naruto got back up, but Raiga threw one of the Kibas towards Naruto's face and Naruto narrowly dodged it again, but this time felt the tip of the blade slash against his cheek as a bit of blood tricked down it. Naruto pushed himself away. Suetun Mizu Dangon no Jutsu. Raiga quickly did the same. Suetun Mizu Dangon no Jutsu. The bullets from each side collided with one another, neither managing to hit the opponent, and the jutsus quickly cancelled each other out. Raiga and Naruto battled, both trying to get the better over the other as Raiga swung one of the Kibas at Naruto, who managed to block the blade. Raiga then brought the second Kiba up and aimed it at Naruto's abdomen from the side. Naruto saw it from the corner of his eye and the blade hit Naruto. Kuratsuchi gasped a little seeing Naruto get hit, but then saw his from burst into smoke and be replaced by a log. Raiga looked around for a few moments before he saw a shadow forming beneath him. He looked up and saw Naruto coming down towards him. Naruto aimed to split Raiga right down the middle, but with his swords in an X shape, Raiga blocked the strike as the two again fought for dominance. This time though, Naruto used his footwork to his advantage and managed to slip his right leg between Raiga's. He then leaned forward as their blades were crossed and head-butted the swordsman, making him stumble back. Taking the chance, Naruto threw a chakra-enhanced kick to Raiga's stomach, making him tumble and skid to the ground. Raiga fumed as he got back up and felt a small trickle of blood go down his forehead before quickly swept it away. From the side of the clearing, Kuratsuchi was watching in slight awe. She looked at Naruto and could not believe that someone her age was managing to hold his own against someone as strong as one of the seven swordsmen. I thought he was strong before, but in these last few years he has not been slacking. I can barely keep up with their movements as they are. Alright brat, you're not bad. I'll give you that, and your sword is a fine blade. But it's time to stop messing around. He said as Naruto watched as Raiga held up his right hand and made a sign. Kirigakura no Jutsu. He said as Naruto watched in panic as a heavy mist began to form around the field. As the mist settled in, he managed to notice as well before the mist covered the top that the sky had darkened and thunderclouds had set in. As the mist finally settled, Naruto could barely see 6 feet in front of him. His view was completely obscured, and he quickly knew that eyesight was not going to help him here. I have to use my sensor abilities for this one. They might be the only thing I can use in this situation. Now you are in my territory, boy. Raiga said as though his voice could be heard from all directions. Naruto guessed he must have been projecting his voice with his chakra. This is a little trick I learned from my old pal Zabuza. Well, more like stole it from him, but it's all the same. If you are trying to scare me, then you will have to do a lot better than that. Naruto called, but heard a low chuckle. We shall see. He said before Naruto heard thunder rumble overhead and could scarcely see a bright light suddenly strike not far from him. He sensed Raiga was about 20 meters to his left and threw a few shurikens in that direction. He heard some clanging before Raiga's voice was heard again. Ikazuchi no Kiba. Naruto could barely see as a lighting current that must have originated from Raiga shoot towards the sky and saw it ripple along the skyline. After a moment, Naruto's eye widened and quickly jumped to the side and rolled away just as a bolt of lightning formed and shot down towards the ground, making a small explosion occur. That was too close. Naruto thought before he went back to sensing for Raiga, who was now 10 meters behind him. He quickly turned around and blocked a strike from Raiga. Sanjiroku Pound Ho. Naruto called as Naruto slashed the air and made an airstrike sail towards Raiga. Raiga though only grinned as he ducked and rolled out of the way and went back to using the mist. Ikazuchi no Kiba. Naruto once again heard as he saw lightning shoot into the sky again, and Naruto once again managed to roll out of the path of the falling lightning strike. However, as he rolled, he inadvertently rolled towards Raiga, who was waiting for Naruto, and drove the Kiba into Naruto's side. Naruto sensed him at the last second and moved to the side, but still the blade managed to cut his side and make blood begin to pour out of the wound. Naruto jumped away and clutched the wound. This is not good timing. He thought as the hand over the wound began pumping healing chakra into the cut, hoping to heal it enough. It looks like the young swordsman is now injured. I guess he is not as strong as he thought he was. Raiga taunted. Naruto took a calm breath. Okay, enough is enough. No more letting him toy with you like this. The next strike he might land on me could be the last. Use the training your senseis have given you. As his left hand poured some more healing chakra into the wound, Naruto brought his right fist up and slammed it into the ground, causing the entire field to quake and become dislodged as large rocks and debris shot all over the place. Raiga, who was going to strike Naruto again, lost balance and stumbled just as Naruto managed to sense where he was again. Pushing himself forward, Naruto clashed blades with Raiga again as Raiga tried to force Naruto back. He managed to do so, but watched as Naruto burst in a puff of some. Where is he? He thought as he tried to look around, only to realize that the tables had now turned and Naruto was now using the mist to his advantage. Not wanting to let a kid beat him, Raiga put his blades in the air as lightning hit the blades and electricity covered his entire body. Reijiki no Yoroi. This is only good for one attack, but I will kill you. Naruto listened nearby as he closed his eyes and sensed Raiga. He could tell that jutsu in particular had taken a lot of chakra from him, and sooner or later the guy would be running on empty, while Naruto's large reserves still has plenty in them. His wound on his side was now partially healed, though as soon as the battle was over he would need to finish the job and bandage his side. The armor was similar to what the Reikage used, only nowhere near as strong. Naruto gathered chakra and built it up in his body. If I can use a powerful burst of chakra to release a genjutsu, then it should be possible to do something similar for this jutsu. Nothing can get through this armor. Be thankful that afterwards I will give you a proper burial. I'll pass. Naruto thought before he gathered earth chakra in one hand and water in the other. He slammed them together and was thankful that the mist was in full effect. Mokutan Makuzo Chikuyari. He said silently and grinned as moments later he felt Raiga become panicked and a loud cry echoed out. Where is he? Raiga said to himself as he looked all around for Naruto, hating that he was now the one being toyed with. Trying to get a lock on the young shinobi, Raiga was about to push off towards where he thought Naruto was, but before he could move, he felt two sharp objects pierce into his ankles, going straight through the bone. Ah! Raiga cried out as he dropped one of the kibas, making the lightning around him disperse and leave him. He crouched down as his hands held his ankles, pain was shooting along his ankles like fire. From afar, Naruto heard the dropping of a blade and used this moment to his advantage, and perhaps now would be a good moment for him to use a new technique of his. Itoryu Komenbachi. He said as he ran towards Raiga and jumped into the air. As he descended down towards Raiga, he positioned his blade into a stabbing position. Coming down from the air, he saw Raiga stand up shakily and at the last moment saw Naruto coming down towards him. He tried to move, but his ankles were in too much pain. He tried to block it, but he was too slow and his last technique had taken a lot out of him. Naruto's blade came down upon him and went straight through the right side of his chest. Naruto stood like that for a moment as his sword impaled the former Kiri shinobi before he drew it out and put Shusui back into its sheath. He then gathered a big amount of chakra before a few moments later he released it all. The result was what he wanted as the mist around him began to disappear and clear up. As it faded, he saw that beside Kuratsuchi were Anko and Makoto, both looking worried. Though he saw Makoto's shocked look when she saw Raiga slumped to his knees on the ground. Whoa! He heard Anko say as Kuratsuchi nodded from her seat on the ground. I wondered when you two would get here. He said. He saw Makoto look at him with a scowl on her face, but then saw her attention focus back behind him. Turning around, his eyes widened when he saw Raiga starting to stand up and grabbed his two kiba blades. Wow! What a guy! Now I know why he was a member of the Seven. This is not over yet, brat. Now until one of us is dead on the ground. Raiga managed to wheeze out even though his hands were barely able to hold the two blades. From the side, Anko was about to step forward but stopped when Makoto put an arm in front of her. This is not our fight, Anko. This is a battle between two swordsmen. If we intervene now, then we would only shame them both. This will most likely be Raiga's last stand. She said. They saw Naruto turned back around and grip his sheath as he got in a position that all three recognized. The whole field was silent as the two Kenjutsu users stared at one another. Raiga, despite the pain in his ankles, ran forward as the kibas lit up, covered in lightning again. Every step he took sent waves of pain through his ankles, but he ignored it for this last moment, knowing it might be his last. He swung his blades down. Rario no Tatsumaki. As he closed in, Naruto closed his eyes and put his hand on the handle of the Shusui, and once Raiga got close, he snapped them open. Itoryu Iai Shurshur Sun Sun. Naruto disappeared and then reappeared behind Raiga as Raiga stopped dead in his tracks. A small trickle of blood went down his chin before he managed to turn his head towards Naruto and looked at the blonde, who now turned his head around to look at Raiga. Why, you are a fine swordsman. I may have started out your enemy, but no, I am glad that I could fall to the sword of one who will become a great swordsman in our world. Naruto said nothing, but nodded as he made the final clink sound as his blade hit the sheath. When it did, blood spurted from Raiga's chest as a long diagonal cut appeared and forced Raiga to the ground. As he hit the ground, his eyes closed permanently, while Anko, Makoto and Kuratsuchi now had one thing on their mind. Naruto / he just killed a member of the Seven Swordsmen. Naruto looked at his fallen opponent and offered a small prayer as he wished for his opponent a good life in the afterlife before he put his hand over his left shoulder where a long cut now lay. I guess Raiga's last cut did manage to hit its mark, he thought. The wound was not life-threatening or anything, but he knew that it would scar over, and for that he was actually happy. It would be a scar that would serve as a memento from his battle with a member of the Seven Swordsmen and a powerful Kiri shinobi. Silently Makoto, Anko and Kuratsuchi, who was being carried by Anko, reluctantly made their way towards him. They sought his wounds and knew he would need to get them checked over soon, but for the moment let him lament in his victory. Well, almost before he felt a whack on the back of his head. "Ow, what was that for?" he said, looking towards his sensei, who scowled at him. "What were you thinking challenging an A-ranked shinobi and member of the Seven Swordsmen to a battle? You could have been killed." "But I wasn't." "That count for something, doesn't it?" "Perhaps, but if it did not go that way, imagine what your family will think when we might have had to take your body back to Konoha. Think next time, Naruto. Is your life worth risking for somebody who is a shinobi from another village?" Naruto shrugged. "Probably not, but I did so anyway. It would have been wrong of me to have just stood there and let him kill her. I won't let that happen on my watch. Not even if they are from another village. Personally, I don't care about the silly rivalry between our two villages, and I did the right thing." Makoto and Anko rolled their eyes but knew Naruto would have intervened any way you look at it. "So what exactly do we do with the body?" Anko asked as Makoto looked to Naruto, since he was the one who defeated Raiga. "I guess I will take it with me back to the Leaf. Raiga had a big bounty on him since he was an A-ranked missing nin and member of the Seven Swordsmen. It would be a nice income addition to have. Plus we now have the Kiba blades to deal with," he said as he walked over and went to pick the twin blades up, only for a new presence to appear and land in front of Naruto. The figure was a Kiri hunter nin that wore the Kiri Umbu uniform. He had light blue hair that stuck up straight, and Naruto could sense he was at least Jonin level. On his ears he had talismans hanging from them, and behind his mask he could sense one of his eyes was different from the rest of him. Makoto and Anko prepared themselves as Makoto clutched her tanto in her right hand, while Anko ready to bring out a snake summon. The figure stood in front of Naruto and looked down at the 14-year-old before looking at Raiga and shook his head. "What is it you want?" Naruto asked as the hunter nin edged a bit forward as Makoto and Anko took a step forward, while Kuratsuchi just watched as she held onto her leg. "The Kiba blades. They are property of the village hidden in the mist, and I will be returning them as such. My future Mizukage Mei Terumi will need the assistance of those blades." Everyone looked at him in confusion. "I thought the Mizukage was Yagura of the Three Tails?" "He won't be for long. Our Kiri rebellion will soon gain victory and Yagura's reign of terror will soon end. The Kiba blades will help in his end, and the nickname Bloody Mist Village can finally be put to rest." Naruto looked towards the Kiba blades that were right in the middle of the two of them. He saw the rebellion hunter nin reach for his kunai pack slowly. Not wanting to cause any problems, Naruto took a step back. The hunter nin took this as a signal that Naruto would not take the blades. He leaned down and picked them up before he sealed them in a storage scroll. But when he went to collect the body of Raiga, Naruto stopped him by putting Shusui to his neck. "I don't think so. I triumphed over Raiga and I will be collecting his bounty. This will not be Toleradash. Listen, buddy. If you have not noticed, you are outnumbered 3-1. I could have fought over those two blades, but I didn't because I knew there could be problems between Konoha and Kiri if I did that. The last thing I want is to bring unnecessary battles or war to my home. But this is where I draw the line. I will be collecting the bounty from Raiga's head." Naruto then leaned in and whispered in the hunter nin's ear. "Unless you want me to tell the Hokage and the Hyuga clan that you have a Byakugan in that eye of yours," he said, making the blood run cold through the hunter nin. He looked towards Naruto and retracted his hand away from Raiga. Without missing a beat, the Kiri hunter nin jumped away onto one of the tree branches and sped off. Naruto meanwhile sheathed his blade and stored Raiga's body in a storage scroll. He walked back over towards his comrades and guest and headed back to their campsite. Naruto picked up Kuratsuchi bridal style, making the girl blush and wriggle, but a raised eyebrow from Naruto quickly made her stop and go quiet. As they ran along the treetops and Naruto verifying that Kuratsuchi was okay to go with them, the IWA girl made the best of what she got and leaned into Naruto. Next day. The next day Kuratsuchi was in a similar position as she held onto Naruto's neck from behind as he piggybacked her with Makoto and Anko slightly in front of him. The rest of the night had been uneventful as Naruto healed Kuratsuchi's wounds while Makoto used her limited knowledge of medical jutsu to heal Naruto. But once they got back to the village he would have to go to the hospital to get them checked over. Not much had been said from Kuratsuchi other than thank you for the food and shelter from the Leaf Shinobi. Currently they were escorting Kuratsuchi to the border between their two countries and would drop her a little distance away from a patrol station. Makoto did not want to risk the IWA Shinobi thinking they were hostile. Since grass country was between their two countries, they would drop her off at one of the spots IWA Shinobi stop at regularly in the border country. "You okay back there?" he asked as Kuratsuchi nodded. "Are you going to say anything other than nod or shake your head?" He got his answer in the form of a shaking head. He pouted a little before shrugging. "Suit yourself. Be ashamed not hear that pretty voice of yours. I'm sure it makes many men and some women tingle when they hear it." Naruto smirked a little when he saw her face heat up and felt her flick his ear. "Don't say such things." "Fine, fine," he said back, just happy that she finally spoke. "So, what have you been doing since our battle during the Chunin exams?" "Getting stronger, I bet." "Of course, I said I would and I will still want a rematch one day for that humiliating defeat you gave me. I thought you were going all out against me, but your match with the Uchiha was even more earth-shaking. I hate it when people hold back against me. Hey, you can't blame me for not going all out. I had a genius Uchiha to go up against. I needed some tricks up my sleeve and I could not reveal them all in the match with you." Kuratsuchi huffed. "Yeah, well, don't think you're going to win next time. I will show you how strong I have become. My father and grandfather have both been training me non-stop for the last 4 years." Naruto nodded. "Well, when you want your rematch then I will be happy to give you it." Kuratsuchi nodded back. She turned to look at Anko and Makoto and could see they were both looking at her from the corner of their eyes, obviously making sure she did not try anything. "So why did you help me?" she asked as she saw Naruto turn his head to look at her. He shrugged again. "Why not? I mean, I know we are from two different villages that happen to not like one another very much, but I could not just let you sit there and die. You do know that most would have just let it happen, right?" "I know, but I guess I am not like most people. Most people would say that, thinking they have something different that make them stand out." "True, but I guess in my case it is true." Kuratsuchi looked at him before she nodded again and leaned closer towards him as she looked into his violet eyes. She had to admit that his eyes were very beautiful. Since she knew the yandere has blue eyes, she guessed he inherited his violet eyes from his mother. That, and she would also admit that he was quite handsome. She looked over towards Makoto and Anko again to see that they were not watching them anymore. Gathering a bit of courage and hoping no one found out about what she was about to do, she leaned over his shoulder more, which made him look towards her. Before he could do anything or react, Kuratsuchi's lips pressed against his. It was quick and did not even last a second, but he felt her soft lips against his and could taste cinnamon on them. It made him want to lean in and kiss her back, but stopped when he almost tripped over and fell to the ground. "Tell no one. That was just a way of saying thank you. Don't look into it," she said before she looked away. Naruto could not say anything since he was too gobsmacked to even respond, so he settled for nodding. He then turned back in front of him and kept running along the treetops. The group stayed silent for the rest of the time before they eventually reached the spot where they would drop Kuratsuchi off. She was able to walk slowly towards the patrol station and she watched as the trio of Leaf Shinobi left the area. Though she saw Naruto turn his head to look at her and the two just looked at each and their faces went a little red and heat up before turning away. As they left, both had a tiny smile appear on their faces while Kuratsuchi shook her head. "Calm down, girl, it was just one kiss. A kiss you initiated," she thought before making her way to her destination. Naruto meanwhile thought similar things. It was just one kiss. It did not mean anything, right? Konoha 3 days later. Minato sighed and leaned back in his chair to take a moment rest as the paperwork just built up and up on the table. He did try the Kagebushin to conquer it, but his wife put that idea down, saying he could not cheat his way through it and had to man up. She is so cruel to me. He cried inwardly before shaking his head and sitting upright as Kushina and Makoto walked through the door, both happily chatting and smiling. "How is he?" Minato asked, referring to Naruto. "Don't look into it," she said before she looked away. "He's fine," Kushina answered. Shizen said most of the injuries have already healed, but the bigger wounds like the one on his shoulder and side will scar over. Minato nodded and leaned back again and whistled. "Our son, who is 14 years old, managed to defeat one of the 7 swordsmen. Who would have thought it, even if Raiga was not one of the stronger members?" The moment they returned, Makoto sent Naruto straight to the hospital to get his wounds looked over and sent Enko with him. Then when she arrived at the Hokage office, Minato and Kushina were in the office making out on the desk. Makoto quickly spoke up, since she did not think the village needed an Uzumaki Namake's baby number 5. After relaying what happened on the mission and get to Naruto, Kushina had completed blurred out of the room as she ran so fast to the hospital that most only saw a red blur barreling past them. When she arrived, she but smothered her son into her chest and was checking him over before lecturing him about fighting a member of 7 swordsmen, saying he could have been killed. Minato was the same, though inwardly he could not have been any prouder. As the trio spoke, Jiraiya jumped through the window and threw a bingo book at Minato, who quickly caught it. "There a reason you threw this to me, sensei?" Jiraiya frowned. "Take a look on page 165 and see what your baka of a son has done." Everyone frowned at the tone, but Minato quickly opened up to page 165. Makoto and Kushina looked over to see what they were supposed to be looking at before they all went pale and eyed-wide when they saw the brand new member of the bingo book. Name: Naruto Uzumaki Namake's. Age: 14 to 15. Gender: male. Origin: Kanahagakure. Shinobi rank: Jonin. Caliber rank: A. Known alias: Konoha no Tsubasa Akuma, Konoha's Blade Devil. Known clan affiliation: Uzumaki clan. Known element affinities: Futon, Dotun, Suetun. Skill list: Taijutsu 4. Ninjutsu 4. Genjutsu NA. Intelligence 4. Strength 3.5. Speed 3.5. Stamina 4.5. Hand seals 3.5. Weapons: katana made of black metal with a purple guard and black sheath. Physical description: stands 5'6" and weighs 155 pounds. Golden blonde hair and violet eyes, tan skin, and is known to wear traditional leaf shinobi attire. Special abilities: known to have chakra sensor-like abilities. Despite age, he has Kage-level chakra reserves. Known family: Minato Namake's, Yandame Hokage, Kiroi Senku, Kushina Uzumaki, Beniheim. Other information: is known to have killed Raiga Kurosaki in a sword fight and is known to be able to use the Rasengan in battle. Bounty: 25 million Ryo dead or alive stationed by IWA. 25 million Ryo alive stationed by Oto. As they read the bingo book, everyone just stared at it in fascination and with a single thing on their minds. Incredible. Chapter 18. On my way. Naruto woke up and his eyes flickered as his gaze looked over towards the window in his room, getting a good look of the sky and the few clouds that hovered along it. Turning over, he then looked up at the ceiling for a moment before he felt a familiar feeling between his legs. He looked down and groaned again when he saw his manly part was erected and making a sizable tent form from his covers. It had been that way ever since he last met the IWA girl Kuratsuchi. He blamed that quick kiss she gave him because since then he had not been able to get her out of his head. Every time he thought of her, he could still taste the cinnamon from her lips and as well as feel how soft her lips were. What are these feeling towards her? I don't understand them. He thought, since just the thought of her and her light pink eyes made his stomach do a few flips and his heart flutter. Could I have feelings for her? He wondered since it sounded so stupid if he did. He had only properly met her twice, and one of those times she was trying to kick his ass. He did not dare speak to anyone about this. If someone he knew discovered he was developing potential feelings for a girl from IWA, the granddaughter of Suchikage no less, it would bring trouble, and he knew it would cause even more problems between him and his family. His friends might accept it, but he dreaded what his parents would have thought about it. Especially considering how IWA thinks of his father. Sighing and getting out of bed, he took a quick shower and dressed in some comfy civilian clothes since he had the next few days off. At 15, Naruto was now 5'8" and was now taller than his mother and the same height as Tsunade. His hair was kept short, since if it got longer then he would just look like his father. The main noticeable change was that now on Naruto's forehead was a purple diamond mark just like Tsunade has on her forehead. Since the news of his battle got out with Raiga Kurisuke and that he was now in the bingo books as an A-ranked shinobi, Tsunade and others knew that Naruto would be targeted by bounty hunters, shinobi, and missing nin. So Tsunade decided that to make sure he had a better chance of surviving an encounter with a potentially stronger opponent, she placed the creation rebirth seal on his forehead. That way Naruto could store chakra into that seal, and if Naruto is injured to a point where he might die, then he could release it if stored enough chakra and heal all his wounds. Plus it helped that Naruto had some knowledge of medical jutsu thanks to his training with Tsunade. Tsunade knew that the jutsu would shorten his lifespan, as did Naruto if he ever used it, but to her she would rather Naruto lose 5 years of his life than lose his life altogether. Kushina, Minato, Makoto and Hiruzen all agreed as well and would give them some relief knowing he had the seal stored on him. Wearing simple black shorts and a dark green shirt, he walked out of his room and saw Anko and Itachi sitting around the table as Itachi ate his cereal while Anko was guzzling down a glass of orange juice. "Morning, sleepy-head," Anko said as Naruto gave her a tired wave and Itachi a slight nod. The Uchiha boy just nodded back before going back to his breakfast. "Busy, I take it?" he asked as he put some toast in the toaster and waited for it to pop up. He saw Itachi dressed in his umbu uniform while Anko was in her usual shinobi wear and was slipping her sandals on underneath the table as she drank. "You know it, got 3 people to torture today. Oh, the blood and the screaming. It just tickles me," she said as she mock shivered. "You know you're never going to get a boyfriend if you keep scaring people like that," Itachi muttered, but felt a swift foot kick him in the shin. Though it hurt, he did not show it and instead just raised an eyebrow at Anko, who was smiling happily at him. "No man could ever handle my desires, my wonderful Uchiha friend," she said, ruffling the top of his head and making his hair go messy. "Beside, as much as I like boys, you know I do like the women just as much. So you keep telling us," Naruto said, since Naruto and Itachi discovered that their teammate and friend was bisexual. In all honesty, they were not that surprised, since Anko always seemed to look at girls behind and chests when they were not looking. Plus it did not bother them, since they both knew she had a thing for both sexes very earlier on and they accepted it easily and quickly. "Then I guess I will warn the male and female population of Konoha and warn them Anko is looking for a good rutting. May Kami save them." "True, but maybe we could get around again. You did love it when we went at it that one time," Anko said, wiggling her eyebrows at Naruto, who shook his head. That was something Naruto would never forget, since it was only a couple of months ago. Naruto and Anko had been home alone and somehow the topic of sex had come up and how it led to them saying that since they were shinobi, they could die on any mission at any given time. Both mentioned that neither wanted to die a virgin. So after some more talking and the eventually addition of some alcohol, Naruto and Anko lost their virginity to one another. It was not bad, if anything for their first time it was pretty amazing, since Anko did things with her tongue that Naruto did not think was even possible. And Anko loved how rough Naruto could get when they were in the moment along with his stamina. The next day after their night of passion, nothing really changed and they went back to being normal friends. Both were not that bothered by it and were happy that they had sex for the first time with a good friend and someone that they both enjoyed being with. They did not understand why people thought sex would overcomplicate things. Before they were friends and now they were friends who lost their virginity to one another, nothing more, nothing less. Though they both felt sorry for Itachi when he came out of his room looking dead tired and glaring at them, neither realized he had even come home and must have heard them going at it since Naruto did not put up silent seals around the room. "I thought we agreed never to mention that again," Itachi said as the two chuckled before Naruto grabbed his toast and went towards the door as he slipped his sandals on. "Where you headed?" Anko asked. "Just to the messenger tower. I have not checked it in a week, so I thought I would do it now." "Can you check mine please?" she asked, giving him the puppy dog look, making him roll his eyes before nodding. As thanks, she blew him a kiss before getting back to her breakfast. Leaving the apartment building, Naruto walked at a leisurely pace as he greeted and waved to a few of the civilians and other shinobi. He saw Kurenai and Asuma sitting with one another and talking quietly to each other. When they saw him, they gave him a wave hello, which he happily gave back. As he walked down the path of the Leaf Village, he stopped at a small cafe he made regular stops to and bought his morning coffee. As he walked out, he sensed two small figures barreling towards him from behind. Quickly turning around and opening his arms, he held strong as two blonde blurs smashed into him and hugged him close. "Naruto and I." Mito and Eiji both called as they smiled up at their big brother, who still held them, and began walking with the two 10-year-olds, one in each arm. "We haven't seen you in ages, Nissan. Where have you been?" Eiji asked while Mito was giving him a mixture of a pout and a glare, wanting him to answer quickly. "You better answer, Nissan, or I'm telling Kachan." Mito piped up, making him roll his eyes. "If you must know, then I have been on a lot of mission over the last 2 months, so I have not been home much. But now I have a few days off, which if you want I am sure I can give up to spend the day with you two munchkins and Mina-chan. Besides, why are you two not at the academical at the moment? Last I checked, Thursday was a school day. Irika-sensei was not well and Mizuki-sensei got pulled out to a mission. So we got the rest of the week off." Eiji answered as Naruto nodded. The twins both nodded eagerly as Eiji hopped down from his brother's arms and walked beside him while Mito climbed up her brother and got on his shoulders. "You comfy up there?" he asked as Mito nodded her head before the trio began walking again. They talked and chatted happily as they asked him about what kind of cool missions he had been on lately and if he could teach them some new jutsu. Apparently they were getting bored in their class since Irika just babbled a lot and lectured too much. Though they did train from time to time with their parents, Kakashi and Jiraiya, it was only light training and nothing cool in their own opinions. Naruto made it fun when he showed them a thing or two and would turn it into a game. They eventually arrived at the messenger tower, and when they got to the top, the twins went straight to petting the various birds that were kept up there and fed them little treats. Naruto smiled at them as he collected his and Anko's messages. He put Anko's away into his back pocket and took a quick look at his own. It was only 2 pieces, one of which was from a weapons dealer from Iron Country, since he liked being kept up to date about the latest chakra metal weapons they developed over there. He then looked at the second message and immediately he turned serious, since on the front of the letter was the royal emblem for the Fire Daimyo. The fire emblem was not difficult to recognize, and he knew if he was getting some kind of message from the royalty of Fire Country, then it must have been extremely important. Opening it, he quickly began reading it. As he did, the twins looked over and saw Naruto's face look gobsmacked and suddenly have the need to sit down. Both went over to try and look at what the parchment said, but Naruto kept it close so that no one else could read it. The twins then resorted to climbing on his shoulder with their curiosity growing, but Naruto then stood up, making them fall on their butts. "Oni-chan, what does it say?" Mito whined while Eiji pouted, both hating being kept out of the loop. Naruto looked at it again for a few moments before looking at the twins. "It is nothing to concern yourselves over. Do you know the way back home?" They both nodded yes, but still looked confused. "Good, you should both go home. I need to go get some advice about something. I will see you both later," he said, patting them both on the head before he took off quickly. Both the twins watched him go. "Oni-chan is so weird sometimes," Eiji said as Mito nodded in agreement. With Naruto. Naruto ran across the rooftops as quick as he could before he landed in front of the Uchiha clan compound and quickly ran forward. About the latest chakra metal weapons they developed over there. He gave a quick wave or nod to the Uchiha members that knew him before he arrived at the main manor house. Approaching it, he saw Makoto sitting on a porch reading while Ria was by her feet coloring a picture. Makoto looked up and smiled when she saw her student coming towards her and placed her book down. "Hello Naruto-kun, this is a nice surprise. I was not expecting a visit today," she said happily, but looked at him in concern when she saw his serious but nervous look on his face. She quickly sent Ria inside as Naruto took a seat next to her and showed her the letter that was in his hand. Her eyes went slightly wide when she saw the Fire Country emblem and already had an idea of what it might be. She scanned the contents of it as Naruto sat quietly beside her. Since Makoto was one of only 2 people he knew about that could relate to this, he valued her opinion highly in this regard. After a minute, Makoto looked up at him looking both stunned and immensely proud. "They want you to join the Guardian Shinobi 12? She asked as Naruto nodded in his head. "Naruto, this is such a huge honor. Oh, I am so proud of you." Makoto leaned forward and hugged him in congratulation, which Naruto quickly reciprocated before they broke off. "What should I do? I mean, should I take it?" "I don't see why you shouldn't, to be honest, Naruto. It's such an honor to be asked to join, and very few people ever get asked. They only ask those that the royal family recognize as the best or will one day become the best. The fact that you have been asked means that they recognize you as someone who has and will go on to do great things. I guess," Naruto answered, looking down at the letter. "Plus it says they just want me there for 3 years, possibly longer if I choose to stay on longer. I would be back by time I'm 18. Then what has you doubting it?" Makoto asked her student. Naruto was quiet for a moment before answering. "My life is here in Konoha, my family, my friends, my colleagues. Not seeing them for 3 years kind of scares me a little. I know it sounds silly, but I would be on my own if I go. When I am in trouble or need help, then I have people here to fall back on. You, Itachi, Enko, Jiji, Tsunade-sensei, Shizen-nechan, Cousin and Tusan." Makoto nodded and she understood. Every time Naruto left the village for a mission, he was either with a team or with people he knew. Now if he went, he would be going on his own. As strong as Naruto was, the one thing he always hated was being on his own, and Makoto knew that. "Don't use your head for this, Naruto. That is the best advice I can give you on this," she said as he looked back at her. "If you use your head, you will overthink it and start weighing the pros and cons. Tell me, Naruto, what does your heart tell you to do? Do you want to stay in Konoha, or do you want to go and join the Guardian Shinobi 12 for 3 years? Know now that whatever you decide, you have my full support as both your aunt and your teacher." Naruto nodded and sat there for a moment as Makoto leaned back and just observed her student as he thought it over. In her own opinion, she wanted him to go because she knew it would be good for him. It helped her become where she was today as a shinobi, and she knew that it would do wonders for Naruto. It would start him on his path to becoming a shinobi that will rock the foundation of their world just like so few before him had done. He had the potential. It was one of the reasons she wanted to be his sensei. So she could say that he was her student and that she helped turn him into the great man she knew he would become. 10 minutes passed as the silence between the two was uncomfortable as Makoto waited for his answer. Then just as she sat forward, Naruto turned to look at her and gave her a small smile. I think I want to join the Guardian 12. Makoto had a look of pure happiness, and from her eyes you knew she was proud. Then you have your answer, and I think you have made the right one. This is an offer that will only come to you once in your lifetime. So many before you have turned it down, like your parents for example, Kakashi, Jiraiya and Tsunade as well, and I always think they made the wrong choice. Leaving the village and joining the Guardians 12 for 3 years when I was 17 was one of the best decisions I made because it helped me grow as both a person and as a shinobi. I know it will work for you as well." Naruto leaned over and placed his head on his teacher/aunt's shoulder as she patted his head. "Thank you, Makoto-sensei. You're welcome, Naruto. That's what I'm here for." Later that day. Since his talk with Makoto, Naruto then went to Asuma since Asuma returned from being a member of the Guardian 12 2 years ago, and Naruto could see how much Asuma had both matured and how much stronger he had become. He was now one of the strongest jonin in the village. Speaking with Asuma, the son of the Sandaime Hokage congratulated Naruto on being asked and spoke with him for about an hour as he told him his time in the group and how it was 3 of his best year as a shinobi. He wished Naruto luck and told Naruto that he had made the right choice. Now Naruto had another job to do. Tell his family. Thankfully it was easy to do since his family were all having dinner at the Namake's household. He told Itachi and Anko earlier that day and the two had both congratulated him and wished him the best of luck. He had their blessings, which was a relief since he did not want his 2 best friends thinking he was just up and leaving them. He was sitting beside Shizune as his family were all round the table. His mother had Eiji and Mina next to her on her right and Tsunade next to her on her left. His father was at the head of the table while he was sitting right at the end with Jiraiya, Shizune and Mito sitting to his left. Hiruzen meanwhile was at the opposite side of table. Kakashi had also been invited, but he was 2 hours late so they started without him. Minato was conversing with Jiraiya about trivial things while Kushina was speaking with Tsunade and Shizune. Eiji and Mina were talking to Hiruzen who was telling them old stories about his time as a genin. Oni-chan, are you okay? You are being really quiet. Mito asked as Naruto nodded. I'm fine, Mito-chan. I just have a bit on my mind, that's all. Is it about that letter you got today? She asked. Thought said it a little loudly since everyone around the table heard and looked towards Naruto. Letter? What letter is she talking about, Naruto? Kushina asked as she leaned forwards a little, looking a little curious and worried. Naruto looked around to see all eyes were on him. He sighed a little and stood up. He reached into his pocket and took the letter out. When everyone saw the royal family fire emblem, they looked a little surprised and already had potential outcomes going through their head. He leaned over and handed it to his father. Minato took it and began reading it over to himself for a moment before he looked at Naruto in surprise. They want me to join the Guardian Shinobi 12 and I have decided that I want to go. No one said a word as they let the information sink in. He was not surprised when the first voice he heard was his mother. No, absolutely not. You are not leaving the village for 3 years to be some pompous man's bodyguard, she said with her voice raised high. Naruto, this is a great honor. Well done, Shizune said as she hugged him just like Makoto did earlier. It is quite an honor to be asked to join the Guardian 12, Naruto. I know Asuma speaks very highly of the group and that it helped him grow as a person and as a shinobi. Yeah, I ran in by Asuma-san and Makoto-sensei earlier to get their opinion on this since they are former members of the 12. You told Makoto before you told me? Before you told you family? Kushina said, not looking at all pleased. Of course I did. She is a former member of the 12 and she is my sensei. Who better to ask for advice on this? I don't think that would be wise. Jiraiya piped up. His attention was drawn to him, causing Naruto's eyes to narrow at the man. He had very little respect for the perverted Sannin and viewed him with much contempt ever since the man showed that he cared very little for Naruto, as if he cared at all. Minato and Kushina have many enemies and Naruto being out of the village for 3 years would be bad idea. We don't need any unneeded attention from a 15-year-old trying to make a name for himself. Your family should come first in this and not your own selfish desires, Naruto, Jiraiya said as Naruto and a few other frowned at how he put it. The fuck's his problem? He should be pleased that I am out of his hair or not even really care, Naruto thought, looking at the toad Sannin. Yes, well, too bad it's not up to you, you old pervert, Naruto said as Jiraiya scowled. I have already chosen what I will do and I want to join for the 3-year contract. Makoto-sensei, Asuma-san, Itachi and Anko have all given me their blessing and telling me I should take the offer while I can. The adults all looked thoughtful while his siblings looked sad at the thought of him leaving for so long. Mina especially was barely holding her tears at bay. Well, I see no problem with it. I think it would be a great experience for Naruto, Tsunade spoke. I know I turned it down, as did many of us here, but that does not mean Naruto should have to. If he wants to join and protect the Fire Daimyo for 3 years, then he has my blessing to do so. She then smiled at her student, making him smile back at her. You already know my answer, Shizen said, ruffling his hair, making him pout a little before smiling again. And you already know mine, Jiraiya spoke, not bothering to look up from his dinner. And you know mine. I don't want him spending 3 years out of the village, allowing Kami knows who to try and hurt him. Kushina spoke firmly, making sure everyone, especially Naruto, knew what she thought about this. Naruto then turned to Hiruzen, who had a contemplative look on his face. After a moment of silence, he took out a small piece of paper, wrote something on it and handed it to Naruto. Naruto then looked it over. Who is the king of the Hidden Leaf Village? It was a question that he had asked Asuma before he left for the Guardian 12, and a question Asuma had failed in answering. Now he wondered if Naruto would fall for the same answer or give the correct one. Naruto looked it over before he wrote his own answer down and gave it back to Hiruzen, who looked it over. Everyone else was looking in curiosity to what was being messaged between the two. The children and the next generation of shinobi of the Leaf Village. Seeing the answer and knowing it was the correct one, Hiruzen smiled and nodded at Naruto. You have my blessing to go, Naruto. Thank you, Gigi. Naruto said, relieved that Hiruzen was okay with him going. Turning around, the then looked at the only person who had not answered yet. Minato sat in his seat and everyone turned to look at him, waiting for what his answer would be. Being Hokage, he should have been used to being looked at in such a way and being used to the pressure. But since this was his son who the topic was mainly about, he could not help but feel a little nervous. He knew that the disadvantage would be that Naruto might be targeted by his or Kushina's enemies, as well as die protecting the fire daimyo, since there would have been hundreds if not thousands of rogue shinobi or mercenaries that would want the head of the daimyo. The advantage though would be that Naruto would get to see more of the world, he would train with some of the strongest people in Fire Country and would be put in a positive light and gain the favor of the fire daimyo. Having a daimyo on your side could only be a great boost for any shinobi. He looked the letter over again quickly before looking up at his eldest. When would you leave? It has no specific date but would like an answer ASAP. I don't think the fire daimyo is one to wait. He said, since after meeting the fire daimyo himself he knew the man could be a little impatient but overall was a pretty decent guy. He was a man that was worth protecting. I am thinking in 2 days' time. I have already sent a return letter saying I would join. They will probably be expecting me to arrive by sometime next week. Minato nodded and sighed. He scratched his head before answering. I guess your mind is already pretty made up then, isn't it? He asked as Naruto nodded as he confirmed the statement. If it's what you want, then I will not stand in the way, he said, giving his son a small smile, and was happy when Naruto returned one. Though by the look on his wife's face she most likely was not happy with it still and would be giving him an earful later that night. As everyone slowly began to talk and discuss again, Naruto noticed the chair where his baby sister Mina had been sitting was now empty. He could hear tiny footsteps making their way upstairs before he sighed and stood up. If you could excuse me for a moment, he said, as everyone now noticed that Mina had snuck off at some point and guessed Naruto was going to go talk to her. Mina's room. Naruto walked up the stairs and walked towards Mina's room. On the door it had Mina's name written in pink and had little stars and glitter decorating it. He smiled because it just showed how innocent Mina really was. As he knocked on the door, he could hear soft crying and sobbing coming from inside. Mina-chan, can I come in? He didn't get a reply and only heard more sobbing. Turning the handle gently, he opened the door and stepped inside. Looking over towards his sister's bed, he felt his heart ache when he saw his little sister curled up in a ball as tears ran down her cheeks and her face looking red and puffy. Mina-chan, he said softly as he went towards her bed and kneeled beside her, going down to her level. He pushed a strand of hair out of her face and gave her a soft pat on the cheek. Please don't cry, my little Haim. It hurts seeing you so upset. She sniffled as she ran her hand across her nose. Naruto pulled a tissue from a small tissue box on her bedstand and had her blow her nose before he wiped away some of the tear from her eyes. As he sat on the bed, he felt her get up and crawl onto his lap. She put her head on his chest and wrapped her arms around him as her little legs dangled off the side. I don't want you to go. I don't want you to leave me. Naruto sighed and out his head on top of hers as he hugged her back. I know it might be weird without me around, but it will only be for 3 years. Then I will be back and we will be together again. You need to understand, Mina, that this honor I have been given only comes around once in a lifetime. If I don't take it, then I might always regret missing the opportunity. She sniffled again, but he felt her nod her head. Besides, you know I would never leave you anyway. I'm always with you even when you don't realize. She turned her head to look up at him with a confused look on his face. He just smiled as he nuzzled his nose against hers, making her smile and giggle a little. I'm always right in here, he said, tapping her chest with his fingers. Just like you will always have a very special place in mine, a special spot that no one will ever take. Mina tapped his chest like he did to hers as Naruto nodded. You want to know a little secret, Mina-chan? He whispered into her ear. Mina nodded her head eagerly, wanting to know the secret. Out of all the people that I care about in the world, you are the person I love and care about the most. But don't let Kasan or Mito-chan find out or they might get jealous. He whispered in a hushed tone, making Mina giggle again before she leaned up and gave him a big kiss on his cheek before she just sat with her big brother and enjoyed his warm cuddles. Naruto sat there hugging his baby sister, and he could not begin to realize how much he was going to miss not only her but Mito and Eiji as well. Hey now, he said, getting her attention again. How about tomorrow just you, I, Mito and Eiji spend the day together? It will just be the 4 of us and we can have a day of fun. We can all go to the park together, go up on the Hokage monument and have some Ichiraku's ramen for lunch. Would that be nice? Mina's eyes gleamed happily and quickly nodded her head, showing she liked the idea before the two decided to go back downstairs and enjoy their dessert. Next evening, Kushina took a heavy breath as she combed her hair in the mirror in her room as she wore her light purple nightgown, getting ready for bed. She was not ready to see her eldest son leave tomorrow, not one bit, but she had eventually relented after she and Minato had spent a good 2 hours during the night talking about it, with Minato finally convincing her. The main convincing was how he described Naruto's feeling towards them both. After discovering how they unknowingly treated him for 5 years, Naruto was very distant and sometimes cold towards them. Not outright, but he was rarely in the same room as them. Now though some of that trust had begun coming back, and Minato said he had noticed that Naruto was talking to them a bit more than he used to and he smiled more around them. It showed that things between the son and parents were slowly being rebuilt at a good steady pace, which is what both parties wanted. Realizing that, it helped her see that Naruto was not a baby or a little boy anymore. He was a young adult and a shinobi of Konoha. One that could hold his own and protect himself when it came. He was a smart boy and he knew when things got too bad and when to bail. So eventually she gave him her blessing. You coming to bed, Kushi-chan? Minato asked as he put a book to the side and got ready to go to sleep. I will in just a moment. I just want to check that the kids are okay, she said, standing up as Minato nodded. Walking out of her room and into the hallway, she first stopped at Mina's room and peered in. However, she saw that Mina was not in her room. A brief bit of panic hit her as she went to look into Naruto's old room, since the twins and Mina convinced him to stay with them for his last 2 days, something Kushina was so happy with. Looking in once again, she saw her children was not in the room. Now even more panicked, she almost ran over to the twins' room. She opened the door and was about to go in, but stopped herself when she saw what, or better yet, who was in there. The 2 beds that the twins slept in had been pushed together to make a bigger bed, and in this new bed was all 4 of her children. Naruto was lying in the middle and had Mina's fast asleep on top of his chest as her little head lay in the crook of his neck. Eiji and Mito had stationed themselves on his side and cuddled into him. Over them were Naruto's arms, which kept them secure against him. Kushina had to bring her hand up to her mouth to stop little sobs from coming out. The scene in front of her was nothing more than perfection. The 4 people that she had carried, birthed and loved more than life itself, all together in a peaceful sleep. I don't think I have seen them all together like that since they were little. Minato said, appearing behind her and wrapping his arms around her. Kushina leaned into her husband as they looked at their children happily. It will be strange with Naruto gone for 3 years. I don't like the thought of one of my babies so far away from me, but I can't keep babying them all forever. I have to let go eventually. Minato nodded silently as they just stood there for a moment looking at their children. At the same time they both noticed that there was a bit of space on the bed where Eiji was laying. Minato saw Kushina look at her children with pure unconditional love. He kissed her head. "Stay with them for tonight," he said as she looked at him. "There is room for one more on the bed, and I know you want to stay with them. Stay with our children tonight and I will see you in the morning," he said. Kushina looked at Minato and smiled at him. She gave him a kiss on the lips before they broke apart. "Thank you," she said as Minato nodded at her before quietly going back to their room. Closing the door behind her, Kushina walked towards the bed and quietly tucked into the bed and laid on her side. She wrapped her arms around Eiji and felt her youngest son lean into her as she kissed his head. She saw Naruto's hand just beside her and gently held his hand into hers. She felt him squeeze back slightly and not reject it, making her happy. She leaned down on the pillows and slowly began to fall asleep. She could spend any night in the same bed as her husband, but just for tonight she wanted to sleep beside her babies and keep them where she could see them. Next morning, Naruto stood in front of one of the Konoha's main gates with a rucksack slung over his right shoulder that had various clothing and some storage scroll contained inside it. The gates were wide open, ready for him to set off and make his way to the fire capital. Behind him Minato, Kushina, Eiji, Mito, Mina, Tsunade, Shizune, Hiruzen, Makoto, Itachi, Enko, Hate, Yugo and Hana all stood there as they waited to see him off. He first said his goodbyes to his friends as he shook hands and one shoulder hugged Hayate and Itachi while the girls gave him full hugs and a peck on the cheek. They reminded him to get stronger because when he came back to the in 3 year, they will have advanced forward a lot. Next was Shizune, Makoto, Tsunade, and Hiruzen. He hugged all 3 of them as Hiruzen gave him some parting advice as well as a few elemental type jutsu for him to master. Hiruzen also told him that when he returned, he would be looking forward to a future spar with his surrogate grandson. Naruto was more than happy to accept. Shizune gave him some healing cream and ointment that should last him a year, maybe longer depending how much of it he needed. She let a few tears slip as she kissed his forehead and reminding him to stay safe and not to get too overly confident. Makoto wiped a stray tear away as she hugged her student and kissed his forehead as she thanked whoever was listening that she got to be part of this wonderful young man's life. Tsunade did the same and gave him a kiss on the head as well as pass over the Shodame Hokage's necklace to him, which surprised everyone. "I know you will be the first to break this curse," she said before she discreetly slipped a storage scroll into his cloak as she hugged him. "That scroll contains some of my grandfather's Mokuton Jutsu. The time away will be the best time to begin fully practicing your bloodline." Naruto nodded before he eventually got to his family. His father was first who brought Naruto in for a hug. Naruto accepted the hug as father and son stood there for a moment before breaking apart. Minato put his hand in his pocket and gave Naruto one of his 3-pronged kunai. Naruto looked at him as if ready to say no, but Minato beat him to it. "Just in case," was all Minato said. Naruto hesitated for a moment before nodding and slipped the kunai away into his cloak. He knelt down to Eiji, who sniffled a little. He put his hand on his little brother's head. "With me gone for the time being, I need you to be the one to look after our sisters. Do you think you can handle it?" Eiji quickly nodded and gave him a confident expression as he slipped his pinky around his brothers, making a pinky promise to protect their sisters. The 2 brothers hugged for a moment before they broke apart. Next was Mito, who was teary-eyed, and Naruto quickly brought her in for a hug as she sobbed a little. "I'm going to miss you," she said through her sobs as Naruto gave her a sad smile and kissed the top of her head. "I'm going to miss you too. But it won't be forever. I will come back, and when I do, I want to see how much my little sister has improved in her shinobi skills. Remember to practice every day and don't get lazy or sloppy." he said as Mito nodded and went in for another quick hug before Naruto turned to his littlest sister who had the hiccups as she cried. My little Minaheim. Don't cry. Remember what I told you. He whispered to her as she hugged him tightly around the neck. He felt her nod her head and poke his chest. In there and in here, she said as she tapped her chest as well, making Naruto nod at her. That's right. As long as you remember that I will always be with you, he said as gave her a kiss on the head while Mina gave him a big long sloppy kiss on the cheek. I will write to the three of you when I can, and I want you to tell me how everything at home is okay, he said to his three siblings, who all nodded and were all brought in for a sibling hug as Naruto wrapped his arms around the three as they snuggled into him. After a few more moments passed, they broke off and Naruto had just one person left to say goodbye to. He moved over and stood directly in front of Kushina, who was doing her best not to start crying and tried to be strong. But judging from the way her lip was quivering, it was not going so well. She opened her arms out as if asking if she could hug him and internally hoped he would accept. Naruto stood there for a moment before he smiled and moved in and hugged his mother. He wrapped his arms around her since he was now taller than his mother. Kushina wrapped her arms around him as well and began speaking quietly to him. I know you are grown up now, but as a mother I need to tell you these things. Remember not to stay up too late and to get plenty of rest. Remember to eat all 3 meals and not to overdo the ramen like we Uzumaki tend to do. Make some new friends while you are at the capital and never get too over your head in dangerous situations. Listen to your senpais and don't overdo your training. I don't want you coming home in crutches or worse. By now Kushina was letting her tear flow. But most importantly, be happy and know that I love you so much. I know I have not been a very good mother to you and I have made some horrid mistakes, but you are my first baby and I see how special you are now. You are my first child and therefore you are a piece of me. She sobbed as she kissed the side of his head. Come home safe and come back to me. Those who were close that heard her words smiled as they wiped some stray tears out of their eyes. Naruto meanwhile listened to his mother's words, and deep inside his heart the pain that was inflicted on him over those 5 years of loneliness and neglect finally began to show signs of healing properly. He hugged his mother tighter, kissed her on the cheek and spoke 4 words that he had not said in so long. I love you, Kaa-chan. Kushina let out a little gasp and her body shook at hearing those words and hugged him even tighter as she stroked the back of his head while Naruto leaned into his mother, finally enjoying the warmth from her just like he did when he was a child. Letting out a few sniffles, they finally broke apart as Naruto gave her one last smile before he turned around. 2 Anbu escorts stood patiently waiting as they ready to escort him to the capital. Nodding to the 2 Anbu, he walked towards them and made sure he had everything before turning back to look at everyone. I will see you all in 3 years, he said as everyone waved back at him and said more goodbyes before Naruto and the 2 Anbu leapt into the trees and left. As the large group turned around, Minato comforted his wife and began walking back to their homes. They would have seen Naruto turn his head one last time to look at them, letting his tears run down his face, knowing he would not see these wonderful people for 3 years. Chapter 19. The Leaf Boy and the Rock Girl. Naruto's feet skidded along the ground before he managed to halt himself. His arm came up and wiped away a dribble of blood that ran down his chin and spat out some more to the ground. I knew this was going to be a good spar. It's not often I can let loose like this and really push myself, he said as he eyed his sparring opponent from the other side of the field. His opponent was an interesting-looking man who had the appearance of a monk. He was a bald man with dark eyes and very thick eyebrows. He wore the standard attire of the ninja monk, which was a white long-sleeve shirt and pants with a black one-shoulder top going over the top. He wore the sash which represented the 12 Guardian Ninja group and went barefoot. The man's name was Chiriku and was a senior member of the 12 Guardian Shinobi. He had been there since Asuma had been an active member and had been the one to show Naruto the ropes as well as became Naruto's senpai. Sparring with Chiriku was doing wonders for Naruto's training since the man was easily high Jonin level, and from what Asuma had told him about Chiriku, the ninja monk was easily on par with Asuma, who was one of the Leaf's best. He might not use ninjutsu or genjutsu like other shinobi, but Chiriku's taijutsu was very powerful and was quite knowledgeable in fuinjutsu. pretty good, Naruto. I really have to keep on my toes, otherwise I don't think I am going to last much longer. Shiraku praised as bruises covered his arms and face as well as a few cuts from Naruto's blade. While I have a good sparring partner, I am just glad I can have a good match with my senpai. Come. Shiraku said calmly as he and Naruto sped forward and met in hand-to-hand combat in the center of the field. For 10 minutes the two just fought hectically and so fast that anyone who watched would just see blurs. The ground they sparred on was beginning to crack from the pressure of the pure taijutsu fight. The two met in the middle, again, and both landed a hit on one another's face, making each feel the powerful blows of the other's fist. Prepare yourself, Naruto, Shiraku said as he got in a new stance and an idol of a Buddha appeared behind Shiraku. Reigo, Senjutsu. Naruto remained calm as so many golden aura-like arms appeared around Shiraku and were beginning to sail through the air towards him at a very high speed. He had seen his technique multiple times before, and no matter how much he dodged, he always ended up getting hit. Asuma had told him about Shiraku's greatest taijutsu technique, and now he understood why it was so fearsome. It was great in both offense and defense. Naruto readied himself before he began dodging the multiple arms sent towards him. He jumped, he skidded, he ducked, he rolled, and used any way possible to dodge the attacks. One attack skimmed his face, while another managed to sail just an inch from his shoulder. I wonder if there is any way to recreate this technique? It is definitely something worth having when things go bad. He thought, though, he knew Shiraku would never teach him the technique. The technique was only taught to those who were monks at the fire temple. If you were a monk, then you could learn it if strong enough. If not, then you did not learn it. Shiraku was regarded as the strongest shinobi monk in Fire Nation and one of the main reasons why he was part of the Guardian Shinobi 12. Many looked up to him as teacher and the unofficial leader of the group. Though there were only a few others of the Guardians and not the initial 12 like most thought, he was a powerful force to be reckoned with, and many thought twice before fighting him. At first he was doing well, but eventually a hard hit slammed into his shoulder and Naruto went down on the ground. As he did, the other arms slammed into him, making a dust cloud from their impacts. Not bad, senpai, though you will have to do better than that. You will have to try better, young comrade, Shiraku said with an uncommon grin on his face as his leg swept Naruto from underneath him and drove him to the ground. His palm then extended and aimed at Naruto's chest. However, Naruto managed to grab his wrist before the strike could land and brought his legs up to wrap around his arm and shoulder and brought Shiraku down with his arm locked in an armbar. Shiraku tried to wriggle out of it but found Naruto's grip was solid and his arm would not be going anywhere. He began to feel pressure and pain engulf his arm before he eventually realized he was beaten. He tapped his hand on the ground, which Naruto saw, and let him go. Naruto stood up with a happy grin on his face as he put a hand out to Shiraku, who happily accepted the gesture. I believe that is now 14 victories to me and 12 for you. For now, but experience has its rewards, Shiraku answered before the two began to make their way back to the compound they stayed in before heading to the temple. The other members of the Guardians were watching over the fire daimyo, so Naruto and Shiraku took the time to spar and refine their skills. They had a rotor to win who would protect the daimyo at specific times and when they all needed to be there. The only times they all were required was during meeting with clients and other important people that did not come from Fire Nation. As the two returned to their room and changed, a messenger arrived at their compound and reported they were to go directly to the throne room as the fire daimyo wished to speak with them both. After giving their answers, both hurried to change and look presentable to the fire daimyo. Since Naruto finished with 10 minutes to spare, he sat down at a desk in his room and began writing a letter to Mito. Since he joined a year ago, he messaged Mina once a month updating her and everyone else on how he was and that he missed them and hoped to see them soon. Mito was jealous of all the cool things her big brother was doing and made sure he knew it. In return, Mito would write back telling him what had been going on in the Leaf Village, how the family was, and how the twins were doing in the academy. He laughed since it was always the same answer. It was boring and they wanted to fall asleep, which apparently the class Nara boy was doing. When he was updated on his two best friends, he was happy to find out that Anko had been promoted to full-time Jonin while Itachi became an Umbu captain. No surprise there, since Itachi was quickly becoming one of the strongest in the village and one of the best shinobi they had ever had. Mina would also write back comments or reply from his parents, namely his mother. Kushina wanted him to know how much she missed him and that she was praying every night that he come home safe and sound. His father just spoke about how proud of him he was and that he looked forward to the day he returned home. Finishing his letter and attaching the sealed note on the back of a messenger hawk, he opened his window and let the hawk fly to Konoha, where he would probably get a reply by the end of the week. Wearing his shinobi gear, which was a simple gray shirt with black shinobi pants and sandals with his Guardian 12 sash currently around his waist, he left his room and made his way to the throne room. Throne room. Entering the throne room, Naruto saw the 7 other companions already standing in a line, none saying a word as they waited for the arrival of the fire daimyo. They were currently looking to fill the other 4 spots on the Guardian Force, but so far had come up short. He knew they sent many to Konoha, but those from Konoha almost always turned it down. Naruto could not fathom why people would turn up such a chance, and like Makoto and Asuma had told him, it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The throne room was the definition of grand and fancy. Its walls and floors were pure white and made of marble with multiple tapestries all hanging around the room, all so beautifully made it was like the pictures were alive. At the end of the room were 4 white pillars, 2 to a side next to a golden red throne with 4 steps that led up to it. Behind that was a giant symbol of the fire kanji. He got in line and nodded to his other members, who all nodded back before waiting patiently for the daimyo. They did not have to wait long, as 5 minutes later the giant doors to the left of them opened up and the fire daimyo walked in with a few guard around him and took to his seat while his guard stood at the side of the steps. He was a thin man with a gaunt-looking face and beady black eyes. His was quite tall and had slightly tanned skin, though much lighter than Naruto and his family's. He had bony cheekbones and wore his traditional royal clothing and headpiece. While Naruto, though the man was a very fickle and indecisive man who could be swayed very easily, he was not as stuck-up and pompous as Naruto had once believed or how his mother described him. He was actually a pretty nice person and had taken a shining to Naruto since the daimyo was fully aware of parentage and personally wanted him to be one of his guards for a time. The room was silent as the daimyo slowly fanned himself with a small fan he always carried. His family was probably elsewhere around the palace, while his wife was most likely chasing around the demon cat of her Torah. That stupid feline gave every shinobi in Konoha the shivers. "Afternoon everyone, and thank you for coming," the daimyo said as the guardians all bowed. "Hi daimyo-sama," they all said in unison before they stood back up to listen to the announcement that the daimyo had for them. "In 1 week the Earth Daimyo of Earth Country will be making his way to my palace for a meeting of a possible alliance between Fire Country and Earth Country. It is to help set up some trade routes and to see if we can calm the tension between our respective shinobi villages." The guardians all nodded before the daimyo continued. "The Earth Daimyo will be coming with a guard of IWA shinobi that I have been told will be led by the Tsuchikige's son Kitsuchi. I also hear his granddaughter will be coming as well. Now, since I know the relationship between IWA and Konoha, I expect all of you to be on your best behavior, and anything less than that will not be tolerated. You are here to protect me from those that wish to harm my family and myself." Again they all nodded, while Naruto felt his stomach suddenly become a little uneasy and nervous after hearing that Kuratsuchi would be coming again. He did not think he would ever see her again, and if they did, then it would be in battle. His feeling towards her, if anything, had gotten stronger, and he was still trying to figure them out. No other girl he thought about made him feel this way. In the back of his mind he wondered if she felt anything for him after their brief kiss, though he kind of doubted it. "My full family will be here to welcome the Earth Daimyo into our home, and our meeting will occur during the next 3 days. I will want 4 of you to watch myself during these meetings, whilst the other 4 of you will watch over my family. Is that clear?" he asked, scanning the face of his guardians. "Hi daimyo-sama," they repeated again as the daimyo nodded. "Good, very good. Their shinobi will be housed in the quarters around the Earth Daimyo, so be warned not to start or try anything with them and do not cause any unnecessary trouble." The guardians all nodded and began to walk away. "Naruto, a moment please," the fire daimyo called as Naruto stayed behind as the rest left. As the doors closed, only Naruto and the fire daimyo with his samurai-like guards remained. Tell me, Naruto, will the IWA shinobi be causing a problem for you given the distrust your parents have for them as well as the hatred IWA shinobis are noted of having for your father? Naruto was surprised that the daimyo asked, but quickly shook his head. No, daimyo-sama, it will not cause a problem. I have personally had no problem with IWA shinobi, so as long as they do not start any trouble with me, then nothing will happen between them and me. Very well, I was going to possibly send you home for the week if there was a problem, but since you have assured me there will not be one, then I will expect you to be on your best behavior when they arrive next week. Yes, daimyo-sama. You have my word, nothing will happen during the Earth Daimyo's stay here. The daimyo nodded before waving his hand and giving Naruto the okay to leave. Naruto did just that and headed for the throne room doors as the daimyo got up as well and left via the doors he came through with his samurai-like guards with him. Naruto could sense two of his fellow guardians protecting the daimyo from the rooftops as they did their jobs while Naruto had a few hours off before his watch was on. Naruto walked in his room and lay down on the bed as he took a book out of his desk that read Fuinjutsu Level 7. Opening up, he began reading before he internally sighed at the thought of the following week. Next week is going to one long week, he thought before he began to read. 1 week later. Naruto stood beside Shiriku as all the guardians watched over the fire daimyo from both of his sides as the fire daimyo stood at the front of his family with the palace servants all to the side as they watched a convoy head towards them with a large carriage directly in the center and being protected by IWA shinobi that could be seen as clear as day. Here they come, Naruto whispered as the others all nodded. Let's hope this visit stay peaceful. Sora spoke. Sora was a monk from the fire temple that arrived to join the guardians just 4 days ago. He was a little younger than Naruto but was quite formidable in the temple's teaching and used various winjutsus. He had the same attire as Chiriku, but had a full set of light blue hair that went down to his chin. Naruto glanced at the IWA shinobi and already spotted that such a kid's son since he was a good head taller than the other shinobi and was a lot whiter. He looked poised and focused as if ready to take someone's head off with just a moment's notice. It was not until they got closer that Naruto saw that behind Kitsuchi was none other than Kuratsuchi. His cheeks reddened a little since she was more beautiful in his opinion than the last time he saw her. Her hair was a little longer as well, but not by much, and Naruto could not help but noticed her breasts were a little larger too. When the convoy arrives, the carriage stopped and out came the Earth Daimyo. He was an older man with a very prominent, gray beard and mustache, and his eyes have dark marks underneath them. His face was further accentuated with creases running from his eyes. He wore the standard attire of the daimyo. Welcome, my friend. I hope your journey here was without problems, the fire daimyo asked as he shook the hand of the older daimyo. It was fine. A few bandits thought they would try their hand at killing me, but my guards made short work of them, he said as the IWA shinobi stood proudly behind him. That I thank your fine shinobi for getting you here safely. They have my thanks. The fire daimyo spoke as he nodded to the IWA shinobi as Kitsuchi nodded towards him in acceptance. Come, you must be tired from the journey. I think some tea in the garden is in order. The fire daimyo then led the earth daimyo away into the palace while his family introduced themselves and followed behind. Kitsuchi followed as well as did another IWA shinobi while the others were being led by one of the servants to where they would be staying. Shiriku and Sora did the same while the other guardians went about their own duties. As Naruto walked away, his eye crossed over to Kuratsuchi and found she was staring at him. It was the previously look she gave him where it looked like she was trying to study him, or when she narrowed her eyes in their battle. This was more curiosity, as if she was internally fighting over something. When their eyes met, he saw a very faint bit of red appear on her cheeks before she shook her head and walked away. As she walked away, Naruto's teenage urges kicked in and could help but watched as she walked away and swayed her hips a little as she did. Kami, that's just cruel, he thought to himself before he shook his head as well and went in the opposite direction. He was on night duty to guard the fire daimyo tonight, so he planned on getting as much sleep as he could until then. Plus it was always the most boring of all the shifts. That, and he thought it was weird to watch over someone when they were sleeping. Next day. Moku Bushin no Jutsu. Naruto called out as he slammed his hands together. On his shoulder wood suddenly began to sprout out from his shoulder and began to form and take a human shape beside him. After a few seconds the wood clone was complete and Naruto took a good look over it. He walked around it checking the features were all correct before he nodded and smiled. Alright, that's pretty good. No flaws in this one. I think I am finally getting this jutsu down. What do you think, Kiara? From the side the large form of Naruto's white tiger familiar. Kiara was no longer the small cub he could put on his hand and was now a head taller than he was and was longer than a horse. Her green eyes were still as mesmerizing as before and her large teeth shined as she gave him a toothy smile. It's about time. You spent long enough on the jutsu. Well, Mokuton is not exactly an easy element to master. It is probably why only one person has ever done it before. He muttered as Kiara yawned and lay on her side. Wake me up when something interesting happens. Lazy feline, Naruto muttered before he checked over one of the scrolls Tsunade gave him. He put a little tick next to the Mokuton Bushin before he turned his attention to the Mokuton, Mokujihiki. Alright, let's try this one out. He said as he memorized the hand seals before sealing the scroll away onto his arm. He dispelled the Mokuton Bushin. Loosening his shoulders up he was about to slam his hands together when his eyes snapped to the side and suddenly jumped out of the way. He landed a few meters away and saw on the ground where he had been previously standing was now a large glob of lava. He rolled his eyes and turned to the side where he saw a familiar Iwa Kunoichi sitting on a tree branch. Was that necessary? He asked as Kuratsuchi grinned at him and jumped over towards him. Well, I had to make sure you had not been slacking. She grinned at him and jumped over towards him. So am I up to par? Naruto asked as he crossed his arms while Kuratsuchi smirked. For now maybe, but it's still early. Besides we have a score to settle. Remember I said we would have some kind of rematch the next time we see one another. The Fire Daimyo already warned me not to start any trouble. The Earth Daimyo told us the same thing, but we are not causing any trouble. We are just sparring with one another. No kill shots though. Fine, no kill shots. Kuratsuchi agreed before she jumped away while not even paying attention to the giant white tigress that sat up looking at the two of them in an odd manner before smiling a toothy grin. She guessed this was the girl Naruto had told her about before and who he had developed some kind of crush on. The two sparred for a lot of the afternoon and Naruto had noticed she had improved a lot. Despite being Chunin, he guessed she was closer to being a Jonin. He put her on par with Anko while maybe a little stronger thanks to her Yotan. Her Yotan Jutsu had also expanded and he had to do a lot of dodging and running to avoid melting. Kuratsuchi meanwhile was breathing a little hard. Once again Naruto had gotten stronger than he was before and she was barely able to keep up with him. It infuriated her to know that the gap between them was so large still, but she was resolute that she would catch up to him eventually. She would not allow herself to be taken down so easily. As the Iwa Kunoichi ducked a punch from Naruto, she noticed his legs were a little too wide for comfort. Kuratsuchi grinned just as Naruto saw what she had planned. She entwined her legs with his and tried to force him down to the ground. Naruto thought used his weight to support him and managed to use his superior physical strength to push her back. However, the two stumbled and Kuratsuchi fell to the ground and landed on her back while Naruto landed on top of her. The fall caused the two shinobi's faces to suddenly become only inches apart, their noses even grazed one another. Both Naruto and Kuratsuchi had blushes on their faces and both found themselves suddenly leaning in towards each other. Before they could kiss though, they finally realized what was about to happen and both stopped and leaned back away from one another. Oh, I'm sorry, that was my fault. Naruto said as he got off Kuratsuchi and sat on the ground beside her. Kuratsuchi then sat up and looked away, not wanting him to see her blush anymore. It's fine. It was a sparring match, so something like that happens from time to time. Kuratsuchi said as she tried to get her blush to fade. Naruto nodded and only now noticed that the sun had begun to go down and evening was beginning to fall in. Their sparring match must have lasted a long time since they had started at sparring at 4 in the afternoon. Do you have guard duty? Kuratsuchi suddenly asked as Naruto shook his head. I have already done my shift today. I'm not guarding again until tomorrow morning. Oh, okay. I have the same. I guess I might see you then since the daimyos have another meeting in the morning. Good night, she said as she got up off the ground and started to walk away. However, she did not get far since Naruto's hand grabbed her wrist. His hold was firm, but it was gently as well. She was surprised how soft his hands were. Have dinner with me, he blurted out as his mind began to process what he just said. Oh God, did I just ask that? Kuratsuchi looked as shocked as he felt since she was not expecting him to ask her that. Her blush was beginning to return. Have dinner with him? But this is so sudden. What do I say? She began weighing the pros and cons in her head, as well as thinking what on earth her father and grandfather would say if they discovered she went on a date with the son of the man Iwa hates the most in the world. She was not sure if it was the right choice, but instead of listening to her head, she followed her heart. She saw Naruto look at her with a pleading look before he smiled a little when he saw her nod. Okay. I could get some food right now. That evening, Naruto and Kuratsuchi sat beside one another as Naruto enjoyed his miso ramen while Kuratsuchi ate her shrimp ramen. Both eagerly ate their meals while they made light conversation. So how did you parents take you joining the Guardian 12? From how the Beneheim is described in Iwa, she sounds like she is very protective of those close to her and wants them kept in her sight. Yeah, that does sound like Kachan, but then again mothers are like that. Naruto said. She was against it at first, but eventually she accepted it. She just realized I was not a baby anymore and that I could look after myself. It sounds nice. Naruto nodded. What about your mom? The fire daimyo asked as he shook the hand of the older daimyo. Kuratsuchi shrugged. I don't know much about my mom. From what my Tusan tells me, she was a shinobi of Kiri that my Tusan had a fling with. They were together for a while and they had me about a year later of getting together. But then the bloodline purges happened and my Tusan took me to Iwa since I had the Yotan bloodline. So you got it from your mom then? He asked as she nodded. She is still alive from what I am told, but my Tusan said that the welfare of Kiri had to come first and that she had to help put it right. Apparently she was young as well when she had me, barely 18 years old, while my Tusan was 23. Did he ever tell you her name? Naruto asked as he took a piece of pork in his mouth. Only her first name. My mother's name is Mei. Mei Ha? That's a pretty name. Do you think you will ever meet her? One day, hopefully, as long as the rebellion wins and takes over from the Mizukage. I always wondered what it would be like to have a Ka-san. I love my Tusan and even my grumpy old Gigi, but there are some things that only a daughter can really go to her Ka-san with. I just hope I get the chance to meet her one day. Naruto nodded. Though his relationship with mother had been strained until he left, when he had a problem that needed a woman's opinion he would have gone to Tsunade or Makoto. Makoto, since she was like his aunt, and Tsunade because she was like a second mother to him. So do you have any goals? Being a kunoichi, you must have a dream. Naruto asked as he pushed his bowl away and out his head in his palm as he listened. Kuratsuchi tapped her chin before she spoke. Not really, to be honest. Just to one day become a well-renowned kunoichi and then maybe have a little family of my own one day. What about you? The same, to be honest, become a well-known shinobi, be strong enough to protect those I love, maybe aim to be Hokage one day since the job kind of appeals to me, then a little family of my own. Well, you are already in the bingo book, so you are already well known. You can mark that off the list. Kuratsuchi commented. Oh, I know. I think I have your grandfather to thank for that. He said as Kuratsuchi looked a little sheepishly at him. I am sorry about that. I tried to reason with him, but while he was thankful to you for saving me, he also recognized that you were getting stronger as a potential threat. He was just following what other Kages or shinobi would have done. Naruto sighed. I guess, but it was a bit of a horrid way to say thank you. Kuratsuchi went a little silent since she knew he had a good point. After a few moments of silence, she stood up. I should probably get back to my room. We both have early shifts after all, she said as Naruto nodded and got up as well. I will walk you to your place of residence. It's the least I can do as a gentleman, he said as the two began walking side by side with Kuratsuchi giving him a small smile as thanks. They walked in silence as they wandered around the capital before they made their way back onto the grounds of the palace. They walked in a comfortable silence since both were just enjoying the night air and the sounds that nature was making. As they made it to where Kuratsuchi was staying, she briefly turned to look at Naruto. Thank you for the meal. Today has been quite nice, she said as Naruto nodded. I was thinking the same. Well, I guess this is where we part ways, she said as she turned to walk away, but stopped when a small burst of courage hit her again like it did 2 years ago. She bit her lip but leaned towards Naruto to kiss him on the cheek. However, Naruto turned to look back at her and her lips planted themselves on his lips. They stayed like that for a few seconds before they broke apart as both looked a little shocked from what just happened. Neither said anything as they looked at each other in shock at what just happened. After staring at one another for a few seconds, they did the most logical thing they could think of. Kuratsuchi jumped him and slammed her lips into his lips while Naruto picked her up by her legs and leaned her against a wall. Oh God, you don't know how long I have wanted to do this, Kuratsuchi said as her hands went through his hair. Naruto was no better as his hands were in her hair and going along her thigh. That kiss you gave me 2 years ago has been the only thing I could think of since then. God, I have wanted to kiss you so badly since then. They stopped talking for a few minutes as they just kissed and just enjoyed the moment. Eventually, after 10 minutes, they broke apart and Naruto settled her down. Oh God, that was amazing, she said as she could still feel his dominating lips against her own and how good it felt. As she revealed in what just happened, what had just happened eventually began to hit her. She just made out with a Konoha shinobi, not only that the son of the Yondaime. Naruto was too gobsmacked to really talk. I should go, Kuratsuchi said, but before she could go, Naruto grabbed her wrist again. Have dinner with me again tomorrow. I want to go on a date with you. A real date, he said as Kuratsuchi tried to find the words to use. The damage had already been done in a way and Kuratsuchi wanted to feel those lips of his again. Though she was open with her family, perhaps there was something she could keep to herself. Okay, she said before giving him a quick kiss again before she left for her room. Few days later, Naruto stood beside the guardian shinobi 12. He watched as the Earth Daimyo shook hands with the Fire Daimyo before getting into his carriage and began to make his way back to Earth Country with his shinobi walking from the sides of the carriage. As they began to leave, Naruto's eyes caught Kuratsuchi's just like they did when they arrived at the palace over a week ago. Naruto grinned a little when she saw Kuratsuchi give him a wink and blow him a quick kiss while no one was looking. He winked back before mouthing, "See you soon. Look forward to it." She mouthed back before she turned away and focused on the mission at hand. Something you want to tell us, Naruto? Shiriku asked while Naruto shook his head. No senpai, absolutely nothing, he said as he covered a small hickey that was on his collarbone. Kuratsuchi meanwhile did the same thing as her father noticed she was wearing a light pink scarf around her neck that he had never seen before. Kuratsuchi did not feel like explaining where the hickeys came from since she and Naruto had made out every evening when they could. Something you want to tell me, Kuratsuchi? Kitsuchi asked but saw his daughter smile and shake her head. No Tusan, nothing at all. Chapter 20. Comeback of a Hero. 2 years later. The sound of footsteps echoed through the empty forest as a lone figure covered in shadows walked at a steady pace. Though his body was shrouded in the shadows, his eyes could be seen clearly. His violet eyes flickered all around before they locked onto a building that stood in front of him. It was barely standing and looked to be some kind of old shrine. The front of it was half elevated while the rest had crumbled to the ground with one of the red pillars broken off in the middle. The rest of the building was cracked and had moss growing all over it. The most striking feature though was the numerous Uzumaki symbols that decorated it. He wondered how his mother had never known about this shrine, but guessed that since it was some miles away from the Leaf Village and with the destruction of Yuzu, he guessed she must have thought it no longer existed, if she knew it existed in the first place. Slowly, he walked up the ruined steps of the old shrine and stepped into the main hall, where he stopped and looked at the giant wall in front of him. At the top of the wall were 3 Uzumaki spiral in a triangle formation. Beneath the symbols were 3 rows of masks, each with 9 masks that resembled the Shinigami hanging there. Beneath them was a pit of black fire that flickering wildly. He wondered just how long that fire had been burning. Then he closed his eyes and sensed the masks for any residue of chakra. His eyes flickered from beneath his eyelids before his eyes snapped open and his violet pupils zeroed in on the Shinigami mask that was on the 2nd row and 6th mask across from left to right. Not being able to pick up due to the black fire, the figures unsheathed a sword that was strapped to his back and used the sword to knock it off the wall before managing, with great skill, to balance the mask on the tip of his sword. Once in his hands, he resheathed his sword and looked at the mask. It did look a little frightening, and wondered if that was what the Shinigami really looks like. The long teeth made it look like some kind of beast or demon. Power like this should not be left out in the open just like this. In the wrong hands, this could be used to conquer entire villages and countries. I have to make sure that this mask stays locked away. I pray I never have to use this mask and its abilities, he muttered before he sealed the mask into a spare storage scroll he had before sealing that scroll into a seal on his wrist. Looking around, he felt the history of his old clan in this room and wondered what would have happened to it if Yuzu was still with them today. Taking one last look at the room, he turned his back and left the building. Once outside, he looked back towards the old shrine and did a few hand signs before slamming his hand on the ground. All around the area, new trees began growing out of the earth and create a new dense cover and wall around the shrine, completely hiding it from view. Grinning at his work, he then ran up the tree and stood on one of the top branches. Just a little ways off in the distance, he could see light and buildings lay beside a familiar-looking mountain he had grown up with. "Home," he said before he ran along the treetops. Though before he could go much closer, he stopped when he felt a familiar chakra signature he had not felt in 3 years. Mito-chan? He thought before he then sensed 2 others with her. One he could tell was hurt, while the third had a vile chakra about him. He could feel the other chakra signature's intentions. His eyes narrowed before he suddenly shot off from the ground. Few miles outside of Leaf Village. Mito had never been so scared in her entire life. Sure, she had been in some scary situations before, like the time she and Eiji called Tsunade an old hag and then got chased around the village by the enraged Sannin for a good half a day before their mother eventually saved them. Then there was the time when she was 4 and she got stuck in a tree. After calling out for help, eventually her brother's friend Anko appeared and got her out. Now, though, she was stuck and alone. She had passed the genin exams earlier that day with all her friends and her twin, and they were going to go celebrate when Mizuki-sensei pulled her over and spoke to her about an extra credit assignment. She had to steal the forbidden scroll from her father's office. She was not sure of it at first, but she had been stupid enough to believe Mizuki. She should have told her parents, but did she? No, she did not. Despite her father being in the office, she used a stupid jutsu Eiji had made up called the sexy jutsu. The image of a naked girl was all it took to knock her Tusan out with a nosebleed. She felt a little disappointed that her father was a closet pervert, but she could always just tell her Ka-san later. It was only later, when Irika caught her outside the village, that she realized she had been tricked. She knew the village like the back of her hand, so she knew a few secret entrances that the kids used to get in and out of the village. Now, though, her teacher Mizuki, who turned out was a traitor, had her cornered against a tree while Irika was on the ground with a giant shuriken sticking out of his back. I have never felt so stupid before, she thought before Mizuki took a step towards her with a grin on his face. The little fox girl trapped in a corner. You were so easy to trick, it wasn't even funny. How delightful, he said as he saw Mito looked confused by the statement. Oh, you don't know, do you? You don't know the secret your family has kept from you for so long, do you? How about I enlighten you? Tell me what you know about the fox attack 13 years ago, he asked as Mito looked at him in confusion. The Nine Tails attacked and my dad managed to beat it and send it away. Mizuki laughed before smiling evilly at her. No, no little girl, your dad did not defeat it like everyone thinks he did. Did you know the only way to stop a tailed beast is to seal it away? Seal it away into a person, he said as Mito had a sense of dread hit her. Don't you think it's ironic you and your brother were born just moments before the fox attack? Where do you think you got your whisker marks from? Mizuki said as Mito began to leak tears as she shook her head. You are the nine-tailed fox girl. Mizuki spoke as he laughed easily as Mito sank to the ground and held her knees in front of her face. Mito, Irika muttered but could not speak much with the weapon stuck in his back. And now I will do the world a favor and take you out of it. Mizuki said as he took a short sword from his back and ran towards Mito, who was too stunned to move. Mito's body shook as she felt this was the moment she was going to die and that she could never make up for this mistake she had made. However, before Mizuki could strike her, a loud growl ripped through the air. Mizuki stopped in his tracks as Mito opened hers and both looked to their right. From the shadows a pair of green cat eyes zoned in on Mizuki. Mizuki gulped and was about to throw some shuriken at it when an enormous white tiger leapt out of the forest and sank its jaw into Mizuki's shoulder and making him drop the sword. Ah! Mizuki screamed as the tiger's fangs sank even deeper into his shoulder. Mito looked fearful since the tiger was enormous and towered over Mizuki. It was an animal that could kill you in seconds. The tiger then began dragging Mizuki away into the shadows of the forest as Mizuki was kicking and screaming to try and get loose. His screams continued until a sickening crunch was suddenly heard and everything went quiet. Even Irika looked fearful and hoped the tiger did not come back for them. Mito looked towards the spot where Mizuki was dragged away and quickly shut her eyes when she heard footsteps coming towards them. No, go away. Kachan, Tusan, save me please, she whimpered as she felt the footsteps getting closer towards her. After a moment she suddenly felt a hand gently lay on her head. Open your eyes, Mito-chan. Mito's eyes snapped open when she recognized the voice. The hand on top of her head was gently stroking her long hair. She looked at her savior and she thought at first it was her dad before getting a good look at him. His hair was much too short and had no bangs framing his face but was the same shade of blonde. His eyes were violet like her mother's. He was wearing a Jonin shinobi uniform with short sleeves. He wore a dark red jacket with black flames flickering at the bottom similar to her father's jacket with a small red scarf wrapped around his neck. Who are you? She whispered and watched as he smiled at her. My little sister has forgotten me after 3 years. You wound me, Mito-chan. Mito gasped as she looked at the young man in front of her and put her hand to his cheek. Oni-chan? She asked as watched Naruto nodded. Immediately tears leaked out of her eyes and quicker than she had ever been before she hugged him and wrapped her legs around him. She buried her head into the crook of his neck. Naruto stood up and gently comforted his little sister as she cried both from seeing her big brother again and from the scary experience she had been through. He kissed the top of her head as he held her tightly to him. Naruto looked over at Irika, who was now out cold, and quickly made a Kagebushin. Take him to the hospital, he said as the clone nodded, picked Irika up and shunshined the entire way back to the village. With Irika gone, Naruto focused on Mito, gently rubbing her back and whispered comforting words to her. It's okay, Mito-chan. I'm back now and I won't let anything happen to you, he said as Mito smiled a little at her brother's words. I've missed you so much, she sobbed as Naruto and Mito just stood there for a few moments as the brother and sister just enjoyed being with one another again after so long. Slowly she detached from him as Naruto looked down at her with a happy smile on his face. My little sister has become such a beautiful young woman now. I am going to have to scare the boys away with my blade now, he said as Mito blushed a little. Baka, Oni-chan, she muttered, making him laugh before she noticed the giant tiger from earlier come back out from the woods. She immediately tensed up but Naruto put a hand on her shoulder to ease her. It's okay, Mito-chan. Kiara is with me. She is my summon, he said as Mito-chan nodded dumbly as Kiara came closer. Thank you for getting rid of him for us, Kiara, Naruto said before he put Mito in front of him. I would like you to meet my little sister Mito. Kiara looked down at Mito, who only barely came up to Naruto's chest, and sniffed the small girl. After a moment of silence she licked the girl's face, quickly making Mito laugh and pat her nose. "Thank you for saving me." "You're welcome, young one. I am your brother's familiar, therefore it is only right that I help protect his younger sibling. Just be more careful next time," she said as Mito nodded. "I will see you soon, Naruto," Kiara said as Naruto nodded before she disappeared in a puff of smoke. "Since when do you have a summon?" Mito asked, looking up at her brother. He was so tall now. "I have had a summons for a long time now. I just never told anyone," he said as Mito nodded before she looked down sadly and looked ready to cry again. "What's wrong, Mito-chan?" he asked worriedly. "Oni-chan, am I the Kyuubi?" she asked before her nose twitched when Naruto flicked it. "Ah, what was that for?" "For asking a stupid question," he said before his voice went soft and gentle. "This is something you need to talk to Ka-chan and Tu-san about. You are not the nine-tailed fox, but you are connected to it in a way. They will explain it to you," he said as Mito nodded sadly before yelping as Naruto picked her up bridal style. He was surprised they had not explained it to her yet, but guessed they had been putting it off. "Now let's head home and you can explain why you are out here," he said as he took the forbidden scroll and strapped it to his back. Mito nodded and explained what happened as Naruto walked back to the Leaf Village as he listened to his little sister. Namake's household. "I'll Kushina stop." Minato whined as Kushina slapped him all over with an enraged look on her face. "How could you be so stupid that you get taken out by that stupid jutsu our son created? I should have known I married a pervert. She took me by surprise, that's all," Minato said as Eiji and Kakashi watched from the sofa as Minato got slapped by his wife. Eiji looked just like his father when he was his age and wore blue bottoms with a white shirt that had mesh armor underneath it. He looked so much like Minato that those in his family called him Mini Minato. "You are telling me that the Hokage got taken by surprise by a 12, nearly 13-year-old with a perverted jutsu? I think you are losing your touch. We will find her. I have my umbu already looking all over the village and outside the village for her. They will find her, I promise," he said, trying to comfort his wife. "But what if he is out there, Minato? What if he gets to Mito?" Kushina whispered, since that was what terrified her with her eldest daughter being missing. Hell, she still did not know of her burden. He would not dare. Not with so many powerful shinobi in the village. We would find him in an instant otherwise. It did not make Kushina feel any better about the situation. Kami, was she going to scold that girl when she got back? Whatever made her steal the forbidden scroll like she did, it would not be enough to stop her from being grounded for the rest of her life. "Don't worry, Ka-chan, Ne-chan will be fine. She is my twin after all, and if anything happened to her then I would know about it," Eiji said, hugging his mother round the waist. He came up to just below her shoulder. Kushina sighed as hugged her youngest son before smiling a little. "I know, but it doesn't stop me from worrying. I have had to worry with your big brother being away for so long. It does not help that Mito goes and does this." Eiji was about to speak, but everyone heard the front door open and Mito's voice sound out. "Ka-chan, Tu-san," she called as her footsteps got closer to them and she appeared in the doorway to the living room with the forbidden scroll in her arms. "Mito-chan," Kushina yelled in relief as she lurched forward and hugged her daughter tightly before Minato sighed and went to call off the umbu and taking the scroll before quickly returning. Kushina fussed over her daughter before the two parents looked at Mito sternly. "Mito, you had better start explaining why you did what you did," Minato said to her with a stern expression. Mito gulped and began to recount that Mizuki had tricked her and that she just did it because she wanted to make them proud. "Sweetheart, we are proud of you, but what you did was foolish. You could have been hurt or worse," Kushina said gently as she wiped a few of her daughter tears from her cheek. "Your mother is right, Mito-chan," Kakashi said, speaking up. "It was very irresponsible of you. You should have checked with your parents first." "Mito, where is Mizuki now?" Minato asked, since he needed to have a very long and painful conversation with the silver-haired Chunin. "He's dead, Oni-chan took care of him," Mito said, surprising everyone in the room. "Oni-chan," they all thought before the sound of new heavy footsteps appeared. They all turned towards the living room doorway and immediately Kushina felt like crying as she saw a familiar blonde-haired boy standing in the doorway. Naruto stood at the entrance and looked at everyone in the room. Kakashi had not changed at all while he noticed Eiji looked exactly like his father. His father looked the same as well though he had a few grays in his hair now that weren't there before. But his mother looked like she had not aged a day. She still looked like she was in her mid-30s despite being 41. His parents were stunned as they looked at him. Gone was the boy of 15 and returning to them was this handsome, strong young man that was the perfect mix of them both. "Hey Tusan, Ka-chan," he said looking at his parents. He could see his mother was ready to burst into tears so he just walked forward towards her. By the time he was halfway Kushina had already leapt forward and grabbed her eldest in a tight hug. Naruto just smiled as he rested his head on his mother's head as she sobbed away. He was taller than her by quite a lot now and he never realized how tiny his mother was. "I missed you Ka-chan. I missed you a lot," he whispered and it only made her sob harder and cling more to him. "Our baby is back Minato. Our oldest has finally come back to us," she muttered as Minato then came in and hugged his son as well muttering how happy he was to have his eldest son back home. Eventually Mito and Eiji all joined in as well as the four hugged the return of Naruto. "You are never going away for that long ever again." Naruto wondered where Mina was but he stopped worrying when he felt her asleep upstairs. As they broke up Kushina put her cheeks on her son's face. "Let me get a good look at you," she said as she looked him over. The first thing she noticed was his height. "Oh Minato, look at him, he is even taller than you are now." Well, it was bound to happen eventually, Minato said chuckling at his son's 6'3" frame before noticing the jacket Naruto was wearing. He gave him a praising nod. "Good choice on jacket. Guess the design grew on me after all the time I wore your jacket when I was little," he said as Kushina continued to fuss over him. While the father and son duo spoke, Kushina was just awestruck with her son. "Is this really my Naruto? Is this young man really the little boy I used to carry and push on the swings? Come on over here Eiji, I want to see what my little Otuto looks like now," he said as Eiji grinned and hugged his brother just by himself this time as Naruto patted his shoulders. "You look just like Tusan. You've been keeping up with your training, I hope." "You bet. I bet I can kick your butt soon." Eiji while Mito chimed in the same, making Naruto laugh and Minato and Kushina to look at the scene in humor. Kakashi, Naruto greeted as he just nodded his head towards the older shinobi. Kakashi just gave a polite wave and his trademark eye smile before returning to his book. "You have to tell us what it was like, Oniai-chan. Did you go on cool missions? How strong did you get? Did you fight strong people? Where did you go?" The twins asked in tandem while Naruto tried to usher them to tone it down. "Eiji-kun, Mito-chan, your brother has probably had a long journey and will want to rest. You can ask your questions tomorrow," Minato said as Naruto looked at his father in thanks. He was not that tired, but he would have been if he started explaining it all to the twins who would just ask more and more questions. Seeing the twins talking to each other, he stepped over to his parents' sides and ushered them to speak with him. When they both leaned in, he spoke in a hushed tone. "Mito knows about the fox. Mizuki somehow knew and told her. Irika tried to protect her, but got hurt. He is at the hospital now." Both Minato and Kushina eyes widened, wondering how the hell Mizuki knew about the Kyuubi before realizing he must have been a spy for someone. Most likely a certain snake. "This is not how we wanted to tell her, but I guess we don't have a choice now but to explain it to her," Minato said as Kushina nodded sadly. "I think you should explain it to Eiji as well. He should know what his twin carries just as much as Mito should know," Naruto said, since the twins had always been close to one another. This could be something that Eiji could help his sister with. His parents both nodded and looked at the twins sadly. "Mito-chan, I think we have some explaining to do," Kushina said as Mito quickly recognized what she was referring to. When she looked down at the ground, Kushina put an arm around her daughter and kissed her head before leading her to the dining room. You too, Eiji, you should hear this as well, Minato said as Eiji looked a little confused before nodding and followed after his mother and sister. Naruto, are you coming? Naruto shook his head. I have another little sister to surprise, he said as he took his jacket off and headed towards the stairs. Naruto tiptoed up the stairs, and when he got to the landing he went towards Mina's room. Gently he pushed the door forward and looked inside. When he did, he smiled when he saw that Mina was under her covers with a nightlight on underneath it, obviously reading a book. Naruto coughed loudly to get her attention and saw her stumble a little. "Two-san, I swear I was about to go to sleep," she said, making Naruto chuckled. "And what makes you think I'm Two-san, Minaheim?" he said as watched in amusement as Mina's head snapped to his direction as the room fell quiet. He watched as she pulled back the covers and eventually uncovered herself. Naruto looked at her in amazement because she looked exactly like their mother. The eyes, the hair, the skin tone, everything. Her hair was even longer and not in pigtails anymore. It went down just past the midpoint of her back. He saw her lips quivering madly and tears already building up in her eyes, even her little hands shook as she looked at him. "Oni-chan?" she whispered as Naruto nodded and went across the room. Just like his mother earlier, he got halfway before the little girl jumped from her bed and lashed herself to him, putting her head in the crook of his neck as she sobbed. He kissed the top of her head and held her tightly to him. A few tears of his own even began making their way down his face as he quickly wiped them away. Out of the people he missed back in Konoha, he missed Mina the most. "I missed you," Mina cried out, making a few more tears slip out of Naruto's eyes. He kissed her head again and playing with long red hair as she sat down on the edge of her bed. He placed her in his lap where she still refused to unlatch from him and gently rocked her. "My baby sister is now 10 years old. Look how big you have gotten," he whispered as Mina's face left his neck and looked up at him with those big beautiful violet eyes that she shared with him. He smiled at her, which made her smile back at him, which made her giggle a sweet laugh that Naruto had missed. "You look just like Ka-chan now. Your hair has even got a lot longer, just like hers," he admitted as he played with her hair. "Lots of people keep telling me that and say I look pretty with my hair like this. Mito and her friends sometimes like to play with it too. Well, they are right. You are going to be the most beautiful girl in the entire Leaf Village," he said as Mina gave him a big smile and a kiss on the cheek. Not the sloppy kind she used to give him, but a much gentler one. "Are you back home for good? You're not going to go away again, are you?" she asked, looking a little panicked. She did not want her big brother to leave so soon again. "No, Haim. I'm not going anywhere. I'm here to stay this time. My time in the capital is over and I have finally come home for good now," he said, making Mina smile even bigger at him before hugging him again. Naruto closed his eyes. He had missed this. Later that evening. It was 10 o'clock by the time his parents and the twins left the dining room, and he could see that by their red eyes that all four of them had cried. When Mina, who was sitting on his lap, asked why they were so red, Naruto told her she would find out when she was a little older. It only made her pout and give him a glare. Naruto though found it cuter than scary and just chuckled. "Mina-chan, shouldn't you be in bed?" Kushina asked, putting her hands on her hips. Mito and Eiji sat on the sofa with them as Naruto noticed his little brother was remaining very close to his sister and had their hands holding one another's. "But I wanted to see Oni-chan," she said as she gave her mother the puppy dog look. Minato fell quickly, but Kushina had an iron defense against that look. "It's okay, Ka-chan. I want to see my littlest sister so much that I could not wait another moment," Naruto stated as he gave Mina a raspberry against the cheek, which made her laugh from the sensation. "Besides, you don't think I would be gone for so long without bringing presents back, did you?" he said before all three of his siblings' dog piled on him on the sofa. "Presents," they all shouted as Kushina and Minato laughed at the three youngest before Kushina settled them down and got them to sit around Naruto while she and Minato sat on the sofa opposite them. They watched in fascination as Naruto pulled out 2 scrolls. "Let's start with you, Eiji, and we will go from left to right," he said as Eiji grinned at getting his first while Mina pouted since she was at the end on the right. Rolling the scroll open, a small puff of smoke covered the scroll and moments later Naruto was sitting there with a wooden box adorned with leaf designs around the edges. He handed it over to Eiji, who eagerly took it. "Open it up," Naruto pushed as Eiji nodded and opened the box up. His sisters and parents leaned in to see what was inside. When it opened they all looked very surprised while Eiji looked like Christmas had just came early. Inside the box was 2 rows of 5 3-pronged kunai just like the type used for his Hiroshin. The only difference was the hole in the center was diamond-shaped instead of a circle and the hilts had a white handle with blue flames flickering around it. "I saw how much you liked playing with Two-san's 3-pronged kunai, so I thought you might like a set of your own. The metal is chakra metal, so adding chakra to it will make them stronger. Also it has a blood seal on the bottom of each set so later you can add a bit of blood to each one so that only you will ever be able to wield them." Eiji not keep the grin off of his face and hugged his brother for the gift. Minato and Kushina looked at the gift and admired the fine work. They figured it had to be either Iron Country work or artisan work. "Thank you Oniai-chan," Eiji said as Naruto patted his brother's head. "No problem. I'm sure Two-san will teach you how to use them," he said as Minato nodded and patted Eiji on the head as well, getting a happy smile from the younger Namakes. "Now Mito-chan," he said as Mito looked eager to find out what he got her. "Are you still training in Kenjutsu like you said in the letters you sent me?" She nodded her head. "I am, but I'm not very good at it. I still don't have a sword yet," she said looking down as Kushina stroked her hair. "Some people just take more time to learn Kenjutsu than others Mito-chan. I was the same like you when I was your age," she said as Mito gave her mother a tiny smile. "Well, I'm sure myself or Kachan can help you with your Kenjutsu whenever you need help, but I think I have the sword problem sorted," he said getting a wide-eyed look from Mito and Kushina who both leaned in. Naruto took the other scroll and another puff of smoke engulfed him. When it quickly died down Mito had stars in her eyes while Kushina examining and nodding at the blade that was in his hands. The sword had a pure white hilt with a circular handguard and along the side was pieces of diamond-shaped bronze metal. The sheath was pure white just like the hilt that if it fell into snow, they probably would never find it. "Wow," was all Mito could say as Naruto gently placed the blade into her hands. She began to feel the blade all over and gripped the hilt in her hands. She smiled brightly because it felt perfect in her hands. She knew this sword was meant for her. Kushina took a look at it as well and felt how heavy it was but was surprised that it felt so light. It was a little lighter than her Kitetsu and much lighter than Naruto's Shusui. "This is a fine blade and it's been beautifully made." "Iron Country?" she asked Naruto who nodded. "I get most of my supply imported from there since it's the best in my opinion. I had one of their blacksmiths make Mito's sword and Eiji's kunai. This is chakra metal as well so you can put your chakra or affinity into it if you want." Mito was about to unsheath it but her mother gave her a stern look. "Not in the house. You can unsheath it tomorrow," she said making Mito pout and groan before she quickly thanked Naruto. "Thank you Naruto-chan." "You're welcome. Every swordsman should have a decent blade to wield," he said as Mito just kept fawning over her new katana. "And finally little Mina." Mina quickly smiled big as she could not wait for what her gift would be. "Tell me Mina, can you mold chakra now?" he asked as Mina bobbed her head up and down. "Good, then this gift will be good for you. Am I right in thinking Mito and Eiji have or will have the toad summons?" Naruto asked his father as Minato nodded his head, wondering where this was going. "Then this is perfect," he called as he bit his finger and placed his hand on the floor. "Kuchios no Jutsu." A cloud of smoke engulfed the room as everyone heard furniture getting moved around and the walks creak a little. As the smoke died down, they all looked a little gobsmacked when they saw Kiara sitting in their living room with a giant scroll at her feet. "Whoa," the twins said in unison as their parents played with kunai they had hidden in their clothes. "Yo, is it time?" Kiara asked as she yawned and gave everyone a full look at her massive jaws and pearly white teeth. "Yep, this is my little sister Mina. She is the one you are here for," he said as pushed Mina in front of him as the little girl looked nervously at the big tiger in front of her. "Mina, this Kiara, my familiar and member of the White Tiger summons. She is here because we would like to know if you would like to become one of their summoners. Naruto said as this family looked at him in surprise. Me? She said squeakily. She knew what summons were and that her father and pervy grandfather had the big toads. Yes, little one. Naruto has managed to convince my mother to allow just one more person to sign the contract. 2 is the max we will allow for someone to summon us, and we would like to make you our second summoner. To make her feel more comfortable, Kiara leaned down and stroked her head against the little red-haired girl. She guessed it worked since Mina giggled a little and stroked her head. Naruto, where did you get your summons? Kushina asked, since neither she nor Minato had ever heard of a white tiger summons. They doubted even Jiraiya knew, and he knew most of the summoning types out there. When I was 12, I found Kiara by accident. We became friends and her mother let me sign their contract. I am the first person to ever become a summoner for the White Tigers. And now hopefully Mina will become the second if she wants to. Naruto turned to look at Mina, as did everyone else as they waited for her answer. After a few moments, Mina gave him a big smile and nodded her head. Naruto smiled back and took the scroll from Kiara and opened it up in front of Mina. Okay Mina-chan, I need you to make your index finger bleed a little so you can write your name in this column beside my name. Then have a bit of blood on each fingertip of the hand you want to summon with and put the handprint under the name. Mina nodded and bit into her right index finger. She quickly wrote her name and then bit each of her other fingers and made the handprint on the scroll. When she was done, the scroll glowed a little before poofing away. And there you go. Now I will show you how to do the hand signs for it another time, since we want to make sure you have enough chakra to summon your familiar. I can do that for you now though. Naruto said before summoning another tiger as a little puff of smoke appeared on the floor. Mina's eyes were like sparkles when she saw a small tiger cub that only came up to her knee on the floor in front of her. Its big blue eyes blinked as it looked at its new surroundings. Mina, this is Kovu, Kiara's little brother, and he is now your summoning familiar. Treat him well. Hello, Kova said in a squeaky voice as Mina gently picked him up into her arms. The two stared at each other until Kova started licking Mia's nose, which made her start laughing at how ticklish it felt. Why do we have to get stupid toads? Tigers look so cool, Eiji and Mito said, crying anime tear inwardly as Kushina and Minato were smiling at how happy their youngest daughter looked. As Kiara returned to the summoning realm, Mito, Eiji, and Minato went to Mina, who was happily playing with Kovu, and greeted the new young summon, while Kushina stood beside her eldest and kissed the top of his head. Thank you. They are my little brother and sisters. There is nothing in the world I would not do for them, and that includes you and Tusan. I know I never really said it before I left, so I will say it to you now, he said as he took his mother's hand into his while Minato looked at them from the corner of his eye. It's okay, Kaa-chan. I forgive you and I hope I can have a better relationship with you now. This is why I want to give you something. Kushina's eyes shot up in surprise, as did Minato's, as they watched Naruto pull out one last scroll. She wanted to hug her son to death for finally saying the words, telling them that he forgave them for their foolishness. Know that I am giving you this, Kaa-chan, because I want you to finally make peace with yourself, he said as unsealed the object inside the scroll. When the object appeared, Kushina immediately threw back her hands to cover her mouth as uncontrollable sobs began to sound out, making everyone look at her. Minato went to support his wife while the younger three children stood beside her. They all looked down and saw what Naruto was holding. It was a katana with a dark purple handle with bronze diamonds going down the side of it and a circular handguard. Ryujin Jaka. Kushina whispered as Minato's eye went wide at now realizing that this was her father's blade. Where? How? During my time with the Guardians, the daimyo gave me a week rest since we had been having a rough few months from attempted attacks on him. I decided to go visit Yuzushiogakure since it's where our ancestors are from. Gigi told me about Aji-san and about your argument with him before he passed. When I visited Yuzu, I went into what looked like some kind of kage building since it looked similar to the one we have. At the back office there was a trapdoor underneath the desk. When I went down I saw seals placed around a cabinet. When I managed to break the seals I found Ryujin Jaka. Apparently after the fall of Yuzu some of the Uzumaki survivors went back and buried their dead. Aji-san was buried by a tree that he apparently proposed to Oba-san at while his sword was sealed in a stasis. Only an Uzumaki could break the seals that were placed on it. Naruto stood up and then held it out towards Kushina. I know I never met him, but I think he would want you to have it. Now your peace with him can finally be made. Kushina just sobbed harder as she listened to her son. She reached forward and took the legendary sword in her hands and clutched it tight to her. It was the last thing she had left of her father, and in a way Naruto had given a piece of him back to her. She then surged forward, hugging Naruto close as she cried and showering his cheeks with her motherly kisses. I love you, I love you, I love you so much. Kushina said over and over again, not being able to thank her son enough. I love you too, Kachan, and I always will, Naruto said as he hugged his mother in a happy embrace. He motioned for the others to come over, and very quickly Minato, Eiji, Mito and Mina, who was still carrying Kovu, all wrapped their arms around Kushina and had a family hug. As they hugged, Naruto closed his eyes and felt the chakra signatures of the people of Konoha. I'm home. Chapter 21. I missed this bed, Naruto muttered happily as he laid on his large bed and rolled around on top of the covers as he wore his sleepwear. Since returning a few days ago, he had been given some time off since he just returned from the Guardians and had been enjoying seeing everyone again. Tsunade, Hiruzen, and Shizen had pretty much locked him down in the Sarutobi manor as they wanted to know everything that happened while he was away and all the new stuff that he learned. Though when they got to how his Mokuton was developing, he simply tapped his nose. That is a secret. After that he went to see Makoto, who hugged him near to death, having missed her student greatly, and did the same with him that the others did and pushed him for information. He saw little Ria, who looked exactly like Makoto, that it was frightening. Though Sasuke had seen him once and snorted before walking away towards his compound's training ground. He guessed Itachi's little brother still had that stick shoved up his ass. Though he was a little bummed out that neither Anko nor Itachi were around. Both were out on missions, as was Hana and Yugo. Both girls had advanced in his time away, with Hana being a Jonin now. Yugo joined the Yambu and was under Itachi's command. Though when he asked Makoto where Itachi was, Makoto just giggled into her hand and said he was busy with another personal matter and did not go into any detail. Seeing it was around 11 o'clock and that he had slept in enough for one day, Naruto got up and went to enjoy his breakfast. Cereal or toast, he wondered aloud before going with cereal. With his breakfast in hand, he sat down at the table. Just as he was about to take a bite, the door slammed pen and two figures came barreling in. It took every ounce of willpower he had not to blush, because what he was looking at was probably the hottest scene he had ever seen in his life. Anko, who had gotten a little taller and was definitely more womanly than before, had kicked the door open and was locking lips with none other than Hana Inuzuka, who like Anko had grown taller, was more womanly and had grown out her hair into a long ponytail that went down her back. Neither girls even noticed he was there sitting at the table, since both were too preoccupied with feeling each other's bodies. Anko threw her tan coat off before she growled and ripped Hana's top off her body, revealing white tape around her breasts. Anko quickly ripped those off before her hands began fondling the Inuzuka's breasts. Hana moaned loudly before she felt Anko twist them around and pushed her onto the table, where Anko then bit down on her breasts, making a wave of pleasure hit her. After a moment of playing with Hana's breasts, Anko took her top off and began trailing down her body and was about to pull off her pants when Naruto finally voiced up. What do you know? Breakfast and a show. Both girls stopped completely and snapped their eyes open. They scanned in front of them and saw Naruto looking at them with a smile as he raised a spoonful of cereal at them before eating it. After a moment of not saying anything, both girls screamed. One in shock and one in joy. Hana got off the table and quickly wrapped her arms around her breasts, trying to cover herself before grabbing a cushion from the sofa. Anko meanwhile had lunged over the table and pressed herself against her best friend and hugged him tightly. Naruto could feel Anko's wonderful assets practically smacking him in the face. Anko still didn't know how to be subtle. You bastard, when did you get back? You don't know how much we've missed you, she said as she leaned out and looked at him with a watery smile. Just a few days ago. I guess you guys were on a mission. Hello, by the way, Hana-chan. Hey Naruto, Hana said, chuckling nervously as she scratched the back of her head. If I knew you were coming back I would have stayed. You should have told us, Anko said as she broke the hug but did not get off his lap. Sorry, but I wanted it to be a surprise. My family was happy to see me, as was Sensei and everyone else. Now I'm just looking for that Uchiha we all know and love. Ah yeah, good old Itachi, I'm sure you will see him at some point. He's not here much other than to sleep, and when he is not at the Yambu station or on patrol then he would be at the Uchiha compound since he is the heir. Still as stoic as ever? Naruto asked. Of course this is Itachi after all. Though you will be getting a surprise when you see him, she said, making him look at her in confusion, but knew Anko was not going to spill the beans. He was wondering what she and his sensei were hiding. So you two, huh? Must admit, Anko, I am not surprised since I saw this coming, but you, Hana? I did not know you swayed that way. I didn't until a year ago. Anko got me drunk after a successful mission and we spent the night together. I remembered most of it and I found myself enjoying it. So we hooked up more and more until eventually we just decided to become girlfriends. Hana said as she took Anko's hand into hers, making Anko smile at her. It's not a problem, is it? She asked as Naruto shook his head. No, Hana-chan, it's no problem. I am very happy you two found love with one another. How is your mother taking this relationship anyway? She took it pretty well actually. Shocked at first as you would expect, but she said as long as one day I can give her a grand pup to spoil by some means then she is all for it. In fact, a lot of my clan are okay with it, as are a lot of the other shinobi, and we have not had many people act hatefully towards us, which is very fortunate. The only person who is being a pain is my runt of a brother Kiba. Naruto snorted. That's probably because you landed a hot piece of ass like Anko where he didn't, he said as Anko grinned and gave them a thumbs up. Damn right. So do you have a girl in your life, Naruto? You must by now. Anko asked as Naruto shook his head. No, not right now. There was a girl or two that caught my eye, I guess you could say, but nothing came of them. Naruto lied as Anko shook her head. Well, hurry up and get one unless you were hoping to get a go on this again? Anko said as she pointed to her body. Sorry Naruto, but I'm Hana's now. I am heartbroken, Anko-chan, but I think I will survive. Good, now it's been great seeing you again and I am glad you are home, but it's been a week since I last had sex and I got to get my desires out. Anko said as Hana yelped beside her as Anko picked her up in a fireman's carry before slapping her ass. You might want to leave since we won't be stopping until tomorrow morning, Anko shouted as she ran down the hallway and went into her room. And that is my cue to leave, he said as he quickly finished his breakfast, got a fresh change of clothes and left the apartment just as Hana's moans began to echo through the house. That's it, my Hebeheim, put it right there. With Naruto. Since he did not have much to do, Naruto made his way towards his parents' house where he knew the twins would currently be. Since the twins both graduated, they had a week off from the academy until they had to go back to find out what teams they were going to be. While both wanted to be with one another, Naruto did not think that was a good idea. They both needed to learn to be independent and grow without the other always beside them. He knew for twins that was a difficult process and a hard one, but it was necessary in the world of being a shinobi. Walking up towards the Namake's household, he could sense that both his parents were out and that Mina was currently at the academy. Mito, Eiji, you guys here? He called out, and very quickly a torpid blonde slammed into him. Nichan! Mito called happily as she hugged her brother while Eiji came out of the kitchen at a more sedated pace. Well, you seem happy to see me. What's the occasion? His sister looked up at him with sparkles in her eyes. Ka-chan has been teaching me some really cool techniques with the sword you got me. Really? Well, that is good. How are these kunai coming along, Eiji? He asked as his little brother gave him a thumbs up. Good. Tu-san is showing me how to use them in his spare time. I think I am getting the hang of them. That's very good as well. I'm glad you are both using the gifts I gave you. If you are not doing anything, do you two want to go to one of the training grounds with me? I want to see just how far along my cute little brother and sister has come in their shinobi skills. Unless you're scared to battle me, that is, he said, taunting them a little, and internally grinned when he saw Mito and Eiji get a passionate fire in their eyes. Hell no, we can kick your ass and ISAN, both twins shouted at him as they raced upstairs to put on their shinobi uniform and gather their equipment. They are too easy, Naruto muttered, but smiled all the same. They might have been twins, but you could see how different they could be when you watched them closely. Eiji was the calmer of the two and was more of a thinker, just like Minato was. Meanwhile, Mito was a little hot-headed but very spirited, just like Kushina. Though those two combined, and you could have a strong little duo on their hands. Leaning against the wall, he waited a few minutes as he listened to Mito and Eiji get ready, as both shouted out what to bring with them and what not to forget. It was not very stealthy of them, since they were both now 13 years old and were among the oldest in their year, since few others were still only 12. Mito and Eiji now had separate rooms. Eiji kept their original room while Mito was given his old room. After a few minutes, both twins came barreling down the stairs equipped and ready, and proudly wore their new headbands on their heads. Eiji was wearing dark blue pants and black shinobi sandals while wearing a gray mesh top and a whitish gray jacket over it. He had his kunai holder strapped to his right leg that contained his new 3-pronged kunai. On the side of his jacket was the Uzumaki symbol. Mito meanwhile had her long blonde hair tied into a braid while her bangs framed her face. She wore black shinobi sandals with black bottoms along with a dark orange shirt with black outlines with a light mesh shirt underneath. On her back was her new katana along with the Uzumaki symbol. Orange? Interesting color, Naruto commented, since it was certainly a bold color to go out in. Don't you start too, I like it and that is how it will stay, she pouted, and Naruto put his hands up as a sign of surrender. It's fine. It looks very nice, he said as he opened the door and ushered them both out. Nichan, won't you need your gear? Eiji said, since Naruto was only wearing civilian clothes. Don't worry Eiji, I won't be needing it, he said playfully, which only made the twins want to kick his ass even more. As they walked, all the civilians smiled as they watched the twins tell Naruto how badly they were going to beat him, while Naruto just let a little grin stay on his face the entire time. Training Ground 11. Here we are, this should do nicely, Naruto muttered as he looked around at the spacious field as Mito and Eiji stood a little in front of him. No one else was using this training field, so it meant they could use the entire width of it. Now are you both ready for this? Naruto asked as both nodded. Well, since you two have just turned genin, to make this a bit fairer, I will only use taijutsu and kenjutsu. You two though can use whatever tricks you want, he said as both nodded again. I want you both to treat me like an enemy. If you don't come at me with the intent to kill, then you might as well walk home now, he said in all seriousness as both gulped but muttered a small yes. Good, he spoke as he went to his right hand and unsealed a katana neither of the twins had seen before. It had a green handle and a guard with a 4-petal design, while the sheath had green on one half and white on the other. I have never seen that one before, Nichan. Is it new? Mito asked as she looked over the blade with curious eyes. That's right. It was a gift the fire daimyo had made for me just before my time as one of the guardians was up. As a way of thanking me for my service and for protecting his family, he presented me with this katana he had made from Iron Country, just like your weapons and my shusui. I have had some practice with it, but I think it would be better to use now than shusui. Trust me when I say shusui is not a blade you two are ready to go against yet, he said as both gulped. You both ready? He asked as both Mito and Eiji got in their fighting stances and Mito threw her sword out while Eiji readied 2 tri-pronged kunai in his hands. The wind breezed through the field as Naruto stood there with one hand in his pocket while the other was clutching his new blade shigure. He smiled as Mito and Eiji narrowed their eyes at him. Begin. Not surprisingly, Mito was the first to go forward and came towards him at high genin level speed. She swung her blade down at Naruto, who easily stepped out of the way. She swung at him again, but this time he ducked the slash and stepped out of the way again. The next strike though, Naruto spun and went behind Mito and gave her a light whack on the back of the leg with the sheath of shigure. Mito stumbled forward a little when he did. Moments later he sensed Eiji coming from behind him with his kunai poised towards him. Naruto easily moved out of the way and grabbed his younger brother's arms before throwing him in the air in the direction he was aiming at. Eiji though managed to flip in the air and land on his feet. Eiji threw a few standard kunai at him, but Naruto easily blocked them with his blade, which at this point was still sheathed. Sensing Mito coming from behind him, he jumped into air, dodging a sword strike before landing next to her, grabbing her shoulder and throwing her over to Eiji. Eiji now threw a couple of shuriken at Naruto, who simply caught the shuriken in between his fingers. Meanwhile Eiji caught his sister in his arms and set her on her feet as Mito huffed out in annoyance and rubbed her shoulder. "Together?" Eiji asked his sister, who nodded. "Together." Now both twins came at him as they went in and out in a zigzag pattern, obviously trying to confuse him about who was going to strike first. He was not surprised when he saw it was Mito first, who again tried to take him down with her blade. Naruto though sent a smirk her way before blocking the strike with the sheath of his blade and twisted her around before he poked her in the back pretty hard with the sheath, making her tumble forward again. Grinning at his little sister as she fell to the ground and pouted at him, he quickly saw Eiji appear a couple of meters above him, making a few hand signs. "Raitun, Raikyu," Eiji called as a ball of lightning about the size of his fists formed in between his hands. He stabilized the jutsu quickly before he fired the ball of lightning towards Naruto. "Lightning affinity, huh?" Naruto thought, since he expected Eiji to have either wind or water, but he guessed that was not the case. Eiji and Mito grinned, thinking they had their older brother, but the look was quickly wiped away when they saw an aura of wind wrap around their brother Katana before he made a single slash towards the ball of lightning. The slash cut the ball in half and caused it to dissipate. As Eiji was coming down, Naruto appeared in front of him and landed a strike to his gut with the handle of his katana, causing Eiji to become winded. Before Naruto could lay another strike on him, Mito appeared behind now with her katana sheathed and about to engage him in taijutsu. "Alright little sister, show me what you can do." Mito focused on her older brother before she began throwing punches and swift kicks towards him. She aimed for the point that her mother had told would do the most damage, which was the head, stomach and chest areas. However, she became increasingly frustrated when Naruto either dodged the strikes or caught them. "Stop dodging all the time," Mito said, getting more and more frustrated without noticing that her strikes were getting slower and sloppier. She was getting so mad that she did not notice Naruto setting up a wire strap around her. "Mito, pay attention to what he is doing," Eiji called, since he just noticed what Naruto was doing. "What?" Mito called in confusion before suddenly she became weightless and was hanging upside down in a tree. As she tried to attack Naruto, she did not notice that he had led her over towards a tree and was subtly wrapping a ninja wire trap around it. "Oh, so that's what you meant," Mito said as she gave a nervous grin as she scratched the back of her head. "You need to pay more attention to your surroundings," Naruto said as he poked his sister in the stomach, causing a small giggle to come from her. "Nini," she said as she crossed her arms before her eyes widened when a flurry of shuriken suddenly came out of nowhere and struck Naruto in the back, making him fall forward. "Oni-ai-chan," Mito called out as she watched her brother fall to the ground as Eiji looked a little gobsmacked. He did not think that it was actually going to hit. However, before either could do anything, Naruto suddenly poofed away, revealing that it was just a clone. "A bunshin?" they both said, realizing that it was a trick. "Yep, and you fell for it, little brother," Naruto said, appearing behind Eiji. His little brother reacted as quickly as he could as his tri-pronged kunai surged towards his brother. However, Naruto quickly grabbed his arm and twisted it behind him and pinned him to the ground as he sat on top of him. "You did not think it would be that easy, did you?" he said as he patted his brother's head as Eiji gave him a pout and a small glare. It only made Naruto chuckle more. "Not bad for the first round," Naruto said as he got up, freeing Eiji and throwing a kunai towards where Mito was strung up. The wire snapped and Mito fell comically to the ground, making her yelp. "Oni-ai-chan," Mito shouted angrily as she glared at him as a bump appeared on her head. "The Kaachan flows strong in this one," Naruto muttered, making Eiji laugh and Mito to glare at him more. Eiji quickly went back over to his sister as they tried to formulate some kind of plan against their brother. Well, at least they have teamwork down, he thought as he began unsheathing Shigeru and revealing to Eiji and Mito the cold hard steel of his blade. Right, you two. Since round 1 is over, let's go on to round 2, he said as both Mito and Eiji gulped as they readied themselves. An hour later. I can't feel my legs. Eiji called out as he lied on the ground beside Mito, looking exhausted with a few bruises and cuts covering his body and with a few tear marks in his clothes. Mito was in a similar state. Despite being Uzumaki's and having amazing stamina, their brother was too much like their Kachan when they trained with her. Ruthless. They looked up to see Naruto looking the same as he did earlier, not even looking winded and without a scratch on him as he grinned down at the twins. We hate you, they both said as Naruto laughed. Well, I love you guys too, he chirped as sat down right in between them and placed his hands on their heads. They watched as Naruto activated the Shosen Jutsu and began healing them. Both felt a lot better than they did moments ago. So how did we do? Mito asked nervously as Naruto looked at her critically before smiling. You two did pretty good actually. You lasted longer than I thought you would and your skills are definitely up to Genin level. You both have a decent sized jutsu arsenal for one's your age, and while your taijutsu and kenjutsu could use some work, I think you two are well on your way to being great shinobi, he said, making both of them smile at him for the praise. But I do have some advice for you. Eiji, try not to overthink every situation. If your gut is telling you to do something, then most times it's right. Sometimes you need to take risks instead of always playing it safe, he said as Eiji nodded, since Kushina had told him the same thing some time before. Mito, you need to work on that temper of yours. The more frustrated you get, the slower and sloppier your moves get. Try and stay calm even if someone is taunting you, he said as he flicked her nose before said girl smiled up at him. After a few minutes, Naruto stopped the Shosen Jutsu and both twins stood up. They still felt exhausted and could not wait to just go to bed and rest, but they looked fine now so he would not get chewed out by Kushina. You guys want me to walk you both home? He asked, but both shook their heads saying they knew the way and that it would not take long. After saying their goodbyes and a few hugs, Eiji and Mito left the area and headed home. As Naruto watched them go and saw them disappeared from sight, Naruto turned around. You can come out now. He felt a fast approaching, familiar signature heading straight towards him. Gripping his blade tightly, Naruto spun around and intercepted the person as a tanto struck forward. Shigeru lay in between them as it blocked the strike. The person was an Umbu with a raven mask and long black hair that was tied into a thick ponytail behind him. It was not difficult for Naruto to figure out who it was. Nice to see you have not got sloppy while I was away, Itachi. The same could be said for you, Naruto spoke in his usual monotone voice, though there was an edge of happiness to it at seeing his longtime friend. Unlocking weapons, Itachi took his mask off and an older Itachi was looking back at him. The only difference was the tear-shaped marks on his face were a little deeper than before. The two smiled and hugged one another. I heard you have been back for a few days. I saw Kasen a few hours ago and she told me about your return. Yeah, Makoto-sensei was one of the first I went to see too. Little Ria has grown up well. She looks just like sensei, he said as Itachi nodded happily. Ria-chan has grown up beautifully just like Kasen. I am afraid I may end up beating away boys with a stick. Itachi said as he did not like the fact that boys would gain interest in her in a few years. Ah, don't worry. I'm sure Ria will be tough enough to keep them away. Besides, I am the one with two sisters here, both of which are going to be beautiful as well. 2 sticks will be required. Though, I see little Sasuke's mood has not changed. Itachi just sighed as he shook his head about his little brother. I don't know what to do with him. He has clearly taken after my father more than my mother, and his obsession with one day defeating me and taking over as clan head has become his life goal now. He says that the Uchiha needs to be feared and everyone must bow down to us like we are royalty. He has been getting out of hand lately. How is he towards Ria? Naruto asked, since he remembers before he left Sasuke was very hostile towards his younger sister. It's not too bad now since Ria mostly stays away from him, or myself and Kasen are close, which stops him from trying anything hostile towards her. He rarely speaks to anyone and doesn't have many friends due to isolating himself. Though from the few conversations I have had with Eiji, Sasuke may have a bit of an obsession with Mito. You don't say, Naruto. As his eye narrowed as Itachi nodded a little reluctantly. Eiji has told me that he stares at her a lot in class as well as out of the academy. At home Sasuke mumbles about needing a strong wife and children one day and about marriage contracts. I think he has Mito in mind as a future spouse. No offense here Itachi, but if the only reason Sasuke wants to marry a girl, especially my little sister, because he only wants a strong wife and someone to pop out children for him, then he and I are going to have a problem. Yes, I know I will make sure he knows those are not good reasons to go into a marriage. Kazan is too soft with him sometimes since she wants to think he is just her little baby still. But someone needs to be tough with him. If he steps out of line again, then I may have to be the one to push him back. Makes sense, Naruto said as they walked beside one another as they chatted about what they had been up to, and the topic of Danzo came up briefly. While the old war hawk had not tried anything yet, Itachi had been keeping a very close eye on him, and the minute he slipped up he would act. Itachi Uchiha, where have you been? A loud voice called and Naruto saw to his surprise Itachi go a little pale and gulp. Naruto turned around as did Itachi a little reluctantly to see a young woman standing behind them. She was a fair-skinned girl around average height with green eyes and waist-length black hair and a Heim-style cut tied in a high ponytail with short bangs and chin-length strands framing her face. She was wearing regular clothing with dark gray pants and a light green shirt that matched her eyes. Though Naruto could tell she was a shinobi by the way she held herself. "Oh Kami, how did she find me?" Itachi whispered. "I have been looking for you everywhere. Stop running off all the time. You and I are taking Ria to the park, remember, and then we are getting ice cream," she said, closing the gap between them, and to Naruto's complete shock she grabbed Itachi by the collar and kissed him. Naruto almost dropped to the ground in surprise. He watched Itachi kiss back a little before they broke apart. Itachi turned to look at his friend who was looking at them with a WTF face. "Dude, the hell was that, and who is this?" Naruto asked as he wondered if this was what Makoto and Anko had both meant earlier. "Naruto, allow me to introduce you to Shizuka, my girlfriend." Wondered if this was what Makoto and Anko had both meant earlier. "His fiancée and future wife," Shizuka said proudly as she stuck out her hand to greet Naruto, who shook back in a daze as he just looked at Itachi, who had a tinge of red on his cheeks. After a few seconds of silence, Naruto quickly broke as laughter came out of his mouth and he fell to the ground and pointing at his friend. The emotionless Itachi Uchiha, who always said he would not get a girlfriend until he was 25, is now engaged at 18, Naruto laughed as he struggled to breath. Shizuka raised an eyebrow while Itachi gained a tick mark on his head. "Shut up, Naruto!" Itachi shouted, which only made Naruto laugh more. Grumbling about blonde-haired Bakas, Itachi grabbed Shizuka's hand and the two walked away as Naruto chased after them after he finally stopped laughing so he could get the whole story. That evening, walking towards his apartment and hoping Hana and Anko had finally stopped their lovemaking, Naruto mused over his day and could not help but smile at his friend Itachi. The story went that Itachi was out on a mission 6 months ago and he came across Shizuka, who challenged him to a battle. Itachi tried to get away, but Shizuka left him with little choice. They fought and Itachi won. It was only afterwards that Shizuka dropped the bombshell on his that she was from the Nadeshiko village. Since Itachi defeated her, their law depicted that Itachi had to marry her. Not knowing what to do, he went back to Konoha with her to get this sorted out. He went to Makoto, who immediately began questioning the girl, but to his annoyance an hour later Shizuka and Makoto were laughing and drinking tea with one another, with Makoto telling him to marry this girl right now. Not only that, but even Ria and the other Uchihas that remained liked the girl since she was very spirited and could lay down the law. Seeing no way out of it, Itachi came up with a compromise. Since they were too young in his mind to get married, he said that he and Shizuka would be in a relationship with one another for at least a year to get to know one another and to see if that spark was there. Shizuka was skeptical but went along with it, though after the months, despite Shizuka being a very confrontational kind of woman, Itachi began budding feelings for her and vice versa. Naruto was happy for his friend for finding love in the most unlikely places or situations. Plus he liked Shizuka. She was very bubbly though could be a little clingy to Itachi. She was a strong kunoichi and was a jonin in her own right. Plus apparently his father and the village were okay with it since it meant the heir of the Uchiha found his future wife and the relationship would better relations between Konoha and the Nadeshiko village. All in all he thought it would be a good fit since with every strong man was an equally strong woman to keep him in line. His own parents were fact of that. Speaking of his father he could sense his father still in the Hokage office. Since it was unlike him to be there this late, Naruto shunshined and arrived in the Hokage office. He found Minato sitting at his desk as he had a roster of jonin and the new genin in his hands. Minato looked up and smiled at his eldest. "Hey Naruto, what are you doing here so late?" "I was actually going to ask you the same thing." Minato held up the two rosters. "I'm trying to finalize the new teams for the genin. Something just does not sit right with me about them." Naruto quirked an eyebrow up. "You want some help?" he asked as Minato looked at him in surprise before nodding. Pulling up a chair he looked the team over. The first half were the civilian-born who he knew would most likely not be passing the genin secondary exam. With the amount of clan heirs there were this year he knew the council would be pushing for them to pass. He looked them over and stopped when he saw his mother's name. He showed it to his father who just sighed. "Your mother was very adamant about this. She said with the whole masked man being out there, Mito needs to be safe at all times. She wants to be the twins' Jonin sensei for that sake. And what do you think?" "I'm not against the idea, but putting them both on the same team would make it look like we are playing favorites. Your mother is one the strongest kunoichi in the village, rivaled only by Tsunade and Mikoto." Naruto bit his lip as he looked them over. He guessed he could see the logic in that, but again he did not think the twins always had to be with one another. They needed to learn how to act separately rather than always being together. "Can I make suggestion?" he said as Minato nodded. "By all means do, it would be nice to get a second opinion on this." "Then I think you should split the twins up," he said as Minato looked a little surprised. "They might be twins, but their fighting is much different. Eiji is a more technical fighter while Mito is a head-on close combat type. Mito is a mix of a brawled and Kaa-chan style while Eiji is like a mix between you and Kakashi. This is what I think you should do," he said as he began mixing some of the names around in the roster. For about an hour Naruto and Minato sat discussing the teams as well as mixing them around. All from whether or not the second gen Inoshikacho trio was a good idea and who they thought could survive Kushina, which made them both laugh. They were both so into what they were doing that neither noticed Kushina peeking through the door and laugh and gaze adoringly as her husband and eldest bonded before she quietly sneaked off back home.